2 is public comment. And so if there's anyone, Walter, I think we saw some sign-ups.
Yes, please do. Sean?
Hello, Council. Many of you know me. I'm Sean Emmons. I'm a local business owner in town of a tree company. I'm a licensed state of Connecticut licensed arborist, and I'm also a CTSP certified hazard evaluation guide through the TCIA. Recently, the tree ordinance has been brought to my attention. There are many flags that I have seen in this ordinance that, after reading it, needs to be addressed before you guys approve it. In theory, the ordinance is great. I understand that New Milford is probably is the largest square mile town in Connecticut. Our tree budget is very minimal for what it is. I can blow your budget just driving down the road in probably 2 miles. It's a problem that has to be addressed. Many people are going to bring up the fact of Brookfield. Brookfield's tree that fell on a family, killing kids. That tree was marked by the town of Brookfield. It was half done, and then it came down. Many of your trees, which are out here, are marked. In fact, the last time I did town work was in 2007, and those trees are still marked to this day, 8 years later. For you to come up with an ordinance against people's private property is a big flag, considering you guys have not set the example of taking down the trees that you have deemed hazardous in 8 years. One of my questions for the ordinance is, if a homeowner is given a fine, which I don't even know how he came up with that fine, but if a homeowner is given the fine to remove a hazardous tree or limbs, and said homeowner gets a signed contract from a tree company to perform this service, is the fine set until the tree company can get there? Most tree companies I know aren't going to be there that next day. If it's an emergency, absolutely. I've been called out numerous times, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. It happens, I understand. If that fine is in place and stays in place for the 11 days or how long the tree company can get there, we live in a society now where it's basically pass the blame. So you think that homeowner is going to be glad to take the fine and not pass it off to the tree company? Now, as a local tree company, why would I want to get involved in that if I'm getting passed on the fine of something that's been seen? You state the person has 11 days until the town takes over and does it. That isn't even the standard period of time for which you guys allow your trees to be done in. An example of one is an insurance company. An insurance company will come out to your property and deem trees hazardous around your house. And when they do this, they give you 60 days before they drop you as an insurance client. 60 days of not being fined at all. You guys are going to fine people throughout 11 days. That's a flag that has to be addressed. If the fines are true for 11 days, is the town going to fine themselves for what they've done? I understand the fine and how it's supposed to speed up the operation. Of course, anybody gets a fine, they want to get that tree done. We are opening up a huge gap. A lot of these people aren't going to wait for the professional service of having an insured licensed contractor to do the job. They're going to start hiring people that are uninsured. Now you've got people that are uninsured working along roadways. That's going to create more of a hazard than if you just left the tree alone. I understand accidents happen. We just had one recently. And I've been to 2 of them in New Milford on call. Well, kind of on call. It happened right in front of me. One down here in East Street, when Maine Moon used to be there. I cut that guy out of his car. I remember every second of it. More importantly, I remember crying, thinking the fact that the kid's car seat that was smashed to smithereens, that there was a kid in there. but we got done. We got it done. Everybody was all right. Just recently, we had one down in Pickett District. I understand that. I missed that by about 10 minutes. I was unloading logs on Pickett District at a farm, came down through there, got in my pickup, was headed home, passed all the emergency responders, contacted one of them, they told me what was going on. Sometimes I wish I was there, I could have pulled it off of them, maybe it wouldn't have been such a big deal. But the problem is that tree wasn't even marked. It was a hazard, but we also had heavy rain and a little bit of wind that day. These things happen. In the tree industry, you don't know what's going on. The beauty of it, that I love, is that every day is something different. Every day. No matter what you do, it's never the same thing. We were just on a big contract down in Bridgeport, and we're cleaning up some side roads for the Army Corps of Engineers, and I get a call over the radio. Calm day. Last Monday was fine. Beautiful week last week. We had 2 trees come down on that property. Just out of the blue. Army Corps of Engineers automatically says that's an unexpected occurrence. And then flag it and we take care of it. You're never gonna get this done. I mean, it's just a known fact. I can drive down any road and tell you what's wrong with people's trees just on the border that's threatening the road. It's gonna happen. In theory, it's a great idea. It is. It needs some very fine tweaking before you guys approve this. There's many actions that need to be in place, and the fact that to go on somebody's property and say, hey, that tree's dangerous, and then find the homeowner, that's not good. Not good at all. I work through 4 municipalities. I don't work for New Milford anymore. Someday I wish I will, but right now it's not happening. But those 4 municipalities, when we're out there, our job isn't just to take down the tree, it's to see what else is going on. And we tell the supervisor, and the supervisor takes care of it in a fashionable way. If we had a tree come out, and the homeowner calls us up and says, hey Sean, I got some dead trees. But we get out there, and the trees aren't on their property. You know what we do? We fill out a form, sign it off with our license number, and we pass it on to the other homeowner on a certified letter. That way, if that tree falls, that other homeowner is gonna pick up the tab for it, not the people's insurance. So when you guys go down the areas, or down the roads, and you start marking trees, you gotta remember, you're liable for the ones you mark. But when you give people notification, you're also liable because you noticed it. My other question is, who's gonna govern this? Who's gonna watch over this? Mr. Caradad's been great as a tree warden, but you're talking a huge town. He's not gonna be able to cover all this. He's not gonna. It doesn't work that way. And I wanna know who's gonna be on the panel. In the end of your statement, or in the end of the ordinance, it says that the panel will be addressed for hearings. So that if the people want to butt the problem, have a hearing about it. And at the end of that hearing, a decision will be made whether people have to take care of the tree or they have to pay the fine. Now, as a licensed arborist, I can tell you right now that I give nobody an estimate of verbal, over the phone, of any kind of sorts about a tree without seeing it from my own eyes. And Mr. Caradad will attest to this too, that every tree guide is going to give you a different answer. Every single one of them. It's known fact. Everybody sees something different. They see a way to fix the problem different. I think the best thing for you to do is start with yourselves. Start with the town program. Because right now, I look at the town program and I think it's under budget for it. I think you have a major problem, and you're gonna have a major problem. I spent 3 months last year up in Massachusetts battling the Asian longhorn beetle. I'm not saying that the Asian longhorn beetle is gonna show up on our doorstep next week. It's gonna take a while, but when it comes, you guys aren't ready for the devastation. You aren't at all. We're talking thousands and thousands of trees just gone. Right now, we're battling close right now with the emerald ash borer. Mr. Caridad has possibly spotted it up on Ridge Road. And it's a known insect that's gonna create a problem for all ash trees. And I know a lot of you people don't know everything about trees, but a good 60% of your trees along the road are ash trees. So we gotta look into the fact that our budget is undermatched. Maybe the fact of having one contractor is a problem too. Back in our early 2000s, we had 2 contractors and we got a lot of stuff done. Don't know why it ever got switched to one contractor, but we'll leave that alone for a mystery. And maybe that'll help a lot. So in theory, the ordinance is good. I understand it because of the fact it's gonna help you out with your budget. You're gonna pass the blame on to a homeowner. But do you guys really want that responsibility? Because most homeowners, A, won't be able to pay the fine. Maybe the fine's gonna be more than the actual tree to come down. I've seen trees go from $300 to $12,000. So there's a lot of gray areas in that ordinance that need to be addressed before you, the town council, approves it. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Linda?
Hello, I think some of you know me, some of you don't. I'm Linda Wellman. I live on Pumpkin Hill Road in New Milford. I saw this ordinance yesterday and became very concerned about it, and I want to echo, I don't want to repeat everything that Sean said. I completely agree with him. So let me say that. And I also have a lot of respect for Carlos. I remember him for years when I was covering wetlands. And he's a good man, and well-trained. I am concerned about the number of days. I think 11 days is way too short. If you're on vacation for 2 weeks, you're stuck. $250 fine a day is outrageous in my mind. People a lot of times can't afford to take down the trees, and let me tell you, we've had a couple of episodes in the last 12 months where we've had to pay to have trees taken down. Some of it was covered by insurance, some of it wasn't. A perfectly healthy looking tree fell on our house last fall. We ended up having to get new siding on the top half of the house, a roof that had to be replaced, and it was like a 12-inch diameter tree that fell. And it was a Sunday morning, no rain, a simple gust of wind, and down it came. We've had other trees that have cost $800, $1,000, and up to have trees. This spring, so that was last November, this spring we had a tree that was fine last year, not one single leaf on it this year, right in front of the house. And after last fall's experience, we again got a number of estimates and a couple of other trees that we were kind of worried about. We got them from licensed arborists, and they disagreed on which trees needed to come down. And then we decided while they were there that there was a clump of trees that are in the road right of way, or that were in the road right of way, but the town won't take down a live tree. And so we paid $250 because they were small trees, but they were growing over Pumpkin Hill, and in another year or two they would have taken down the power lines and our neighbor's power line and just blocked our driveway. It wouldn't have done any damage to us. And from another tree several years ago, we discovered that if a tree on our property falls and it goes across our neighbor's driveway and into the next house, we're only responsible for that 2 to 3 feet that was on our property. The neighbor had the driveway, had to cut off and pay for that, and the fellow got the brunt of the tree, the crown of the tree. That was in his yard. We, to be good neighbors, offered to split the cost, but legally we weren't required to. We could have just said, sorry. If you mark a tree somebody doesn't take it down, then that person has been forewarned that this is dangerous. Will his insurance company pay? A lot of insurance companies may say, hey, you were warned it was a hazard. I don't know what would it be, but I think it's a concern. I'm also concerned about sight lines on trees in the road right of ways. They may not be dead trees, but the town won't take them down if they're alive. I'm concerned about you coming onto private property. I think it's a slippery slope. And I know from experience, a small wind can drop a live tree, and I've seen a dead tree standing leaning over Grove Street, probably 10 years. It's kind of an interesting tree. If you're driving, heading toward Brookfield on Grove Street by the river, it's like this tall trunk, and it's curved, and it looks attractive. I almost took a picture of it one day because it was kind of neat, but it's been dead and it's sitting there. Maybe it's going to blow the other way into the river when it goes. Maybe that's why. So again, I'm concerned about who's going to be on the panel, whether there's going to be a certified arborist on the panel. It doesn't say that. I'm concerned about conflicts between certified arborists. And I'm just concerned. There are a lot of answers that I just don't see coming. So I think that you really, really have to be careful on what you decide to do. And living on Pumpkin Hill, I saw a tree that was marked, and it must have been, it was marked by you. It was clearly in the road right of way. It was just a couple of houses up from us. And I would say it was marked for a good month at least before they came to the camp. So this 11 days, I just think is outrageous. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Linda. Carl?
Good evening. My name is Carl Dunn. I live on Cambridge Mountain Road in Milford. In the very beginning of your proposed ordinances, there's two good points in that these dead trees, limbs, these hazardous conditions are definitely a hazard. And I think that's the reality that you have to face. I absolutely don't think that the ordinance is the way to do it. First thing you got to do is I think you got to mind your own. I've been around Strong stuff for years. I've seen trees that the town does not take care of. It's clearly in the town right of way. You should be the example. It's your responsibility solely. I'm baffled by an attempt to put an ordinance on that affects private people, and you're not doing your job yourself. I actually think there ought to be a reallocation of the budget in public works such that this can be done. It's a real hazardous condition. Rather than spend a lot of time trimming little grasses 3 feet off the road, I think it should be reallocated and focused on what truly is hazardous. You're talking about a very kind of obscure response to the situation. The question is, where's the property line for the road? So where the property line for the road is, theoretically, it becomes the town's responsibility. I have to laugh when I watch Lewis go around and do the work on the power lines, and they'll only do what the power line is, and they won't do anything else. I think there needs to be coordination with them, if you can, such that the problems that exist along the roadways are taken care of. There are a lot of limbs that are hanging over, clearly dead. And I think if you focus more on getting rid of the limbs and taking out the trees, you would have a lot less concern. People wouldn't be bothered by it. If you're going around marking trees for the next, creating an issue, saying they're a hazard, putting yourself in the worst position, and then not taking them down. This ordinance creates, and I'm sure Randy will confirm this, that if there's a violation of this ordinance, it's called negligent per se. Now the homeowner, there's no question for what he's negligent. I think that's a terrible onus on people, especially when you don't know where the line is, etc. You're set up to take care of this, and I think it should be taken care of clearly by the town. And I think needs to be done. I don't think the way to do it is with the ordinance. I believe that when you go up and down these roads, and I'm sure Carlos, you do this, you can see things that are problems. And if you can address those problems and do it quickly, but to go and mark them and then wait a while is crazy. Because what you're doing, you're saying, this is a problem. Six months later, you didn't do anything about it, and something happens. So I think there needs to be a kind of a real flow to your approach on this, such that you identify what the problems are. Anything that's overhanging, that's dead, take it out. There's no question. It's over your right of way. It's a hazard. Nobody's going to complain about that. And then when you do mark things, move forward. As far as putting the onus on property owners, I just don't see the point. I see it as being very problematic. If you have a tree that's hanging over, it's on the property owner's property, the trunk or the base, and yet it's hanging over the road, creating a hazard, you guys can do it. Just take care of it. So I think that's part of the problem. I think everybody realizes it's a problem. And all you have to have is have something fall on someone, and all of a sudden you have a lawsuit. So it needs to be addressed. And it certainly is the responsibility of the town to do that, and I don't think anybody's really going to complain about it. And that way, hopefully, you can do it efficiently too. So those would be my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Carl.
Carl. David?
How's everyone doing tonight? That is good. Well, I hope you reconsider the tree ordinance, as well as I'm pleased to be here tonight because we also have an opportunity to reconsider the PCB question at Scottico. Proper testing for the PCBs in the suspected places, the air quality, and the soil will provide us with the facts. If we have those facts, armed with those facts, we can easily determine, do we have a serious problem, or do we have no problem at all? And that's all we have to do. That's seriously all we have to do, is test for them in the proper areas, the air quality, some soil samples, and see if we have a problem. If we're going to be doing a roof, let's do it properly. And I know you all agree with that. You know, putting a price tag on health, I don't think is a good idea. There is no price tag. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Next one.
Yes, Lisa?
Okay, back to the trees. My name's Lisa Alexander. I live at 203 Wellsville. And I submitted a letter. I'm not sure if it was received, but I'm just like to read an abbreviated version of that letter. This is just to share my experience with the cost factor. I'm in support of the ordinance, but I believe it's the property's owner, because I believe it's the property owner's responsibility to take down unsafe trees. However, in New Milford, where 25% of households make less than median household income or are in poverty, a fine of $250 a day. $250 a day would only serve to prolong the risk. I've spent the last few years dealing with a 100-year-old dying maple tree towering over my small house on the edge of Wellsville, which is a very busy town road. There are 2 trees, actually, and a few years ago, a neighbor who owns a tree management service came by and made me aware that there was an issue. So I got some quotes, and it was about $3,000, which was entirely prohibitive for us. We had no savings at the time. And this past spring, I'd saved up enough and had scheduled someone to take the tree down. Meanwhile, I worked with Mr. Caridad and the town, who determined that the history and the location of the tree reflected town ownership, thank God. So this summer, the town removed the tree. I'm really grateful for the town's assistance, but I've still got the other tree, and it's only maybe 10 or 20 years younger. So far, it's okay, but When you think about it, can I imagine what would have happened if we were fined $250 a day from the point we learned that there was an issue? Certainly, would it have made the $3,000 any easier to come up with? No, we simply didn't have it. And, you know, frankly, our house, like many people, was underwater at the time. We couldn't even take out a home loan for that. So, I mean, my feeling is that any daily fine would further delay the removal. And, you know, I believe that this council and Mr. Caradad want the best for our residents. You know, the issue is safety, but increasing the already prohibitive cost will not get the trees down any faster. What I think should happen is three things. I think that the new ordinance should allow for removal of dangerous trees by the town at the expense of the property owner, and that the town should be able to charge the owner, perhaps even at an above market cost, so that there's an incentive for them to, we don't want to go into the business as a town of tree removal. I think that there should be a reasonable warning period. Several people have brought that up. And if the property owner doesn't respond, the town should take down the tree and send the owner a bill. And three, if the owner responds appropriately, they can't pay the cost, the town should offer suggestions to help find financial assistance. And I think that will help get the trees out of the road. I have, if anybody is interested, just where I got the figure about the 25% of folks in town household income. Would you like this for the record?
I'll take it.
Okay. Pass it down.
Thanks, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
I'm at the end of the list unless there's somebody else, Madam Mayor.
Other members from the public would, and I'm gonna, if the council doesn't mind, move this topic up to next, since we have so many people interested in the topic, and that way we can get you out of here soon, because it was number 11.
My name's Patrick Booster. My wife and I live on High Hill Road. We've been a resident for 17 years here. This tree ordinance is important. Do I know how to fix it? No. Well, we are the people that the tree fell on. Don't let this happen to your car.
Take it, mister.
She's gonna have at least a year of medical. You know, something's gotta be done. You got a panel, I'll sit on it for free. I'm retired. I'll help you.
Well,
Thank you.
all these comments are good for everyone. Thank you. Other, comments on any other topic either? All right, we'll close public comment, and instead of even approval of prior minutes, let's just move 11 up. Mr. Caradad is here, to continue discussion on this draft proposal. Draft, is a key, which means it is here working for everybody who's changed. Joe, I see you pencil up.
Not so much for a question, but a comment on this entire situation. It's briefly reflected in the minutes, which I just went back through, as to my position with regard to these penalties and fines. As I have always been against these type of penalties and fines in a variety of ordinances that have come across our table here over the years. I think that the amount is punitive in nature. I have concerns about the amount of time, and somebody mentioned, what if you're away for 2 weeks, and I just was. I actually got back to work today, so I've been gone for 2 weeks. I would have been outside that 11-day window. It's the first year I took 2 weeks at a time. Just, you're entitled. But I have tremendous problem with this ordinance written in the way it is. There are better solutions, and some are recommended by the public. And I think we need to take that into careful consideration, because I just can't support fining people in this community, particularly given the comments that were said here and my personal position on creating fines behind every ordinance. So I think it's the wrong approach by this town and a smart group of council people who can find more effective ways of accomplishing what we want. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie?
I just have a question, Carlos, I don't know, if you'll know the answer to this, but, the mayor might. What are examples of some other, fine amounts that we have in town? For instance, if I didn't shovel the sidewalk in front of my store, left it covered with snow and ice, or if Carl didn't
They
in front of his
would
building.
get a bill for removal.
It's
But
$5.
there's also
It's
a fine.
$5 per day.
$5 a day, and
Yeah,
someone could
2%
slip
of
and
water.
fall and sue the town for that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I said this at our last meeting, and as Joe just pointed out, I think all of us really felt we needed to revisit this with input, and I'm really glad to hear all the things that were said. But at the top of the list, I don't know, we asked, quite, how was that arrived at? And I think that has to be at the top of the list. And under the top item, A, should be, how is it that we have marked trees if, and I can imagine Sean's not telling us the truth, but Carlos, how do we have trees that are on town property that were marked for removal and they are still standing?
Yeah, it's a great question. We had, referring back to the 2007, that Sean mentioned, Phil Lovell was our tree warden. And Phil, great guy, great artist. But he had the habit of going around and marking trees with an X. And not necessarily very carefully recording where he had marked trees. And I think he kind of operated on the assumption that Public Works would follow up and, take those trees down. On top of that, rather poor record keeping was a problem that came to my attention I've seen many, many times, and that was property owners that were concerned about a tree and thought that that was the best way to mark the tree for removal. And so, I'd get a call about trees that were marked with an X, and they were trees that had never been looked at. It was something the property owner had
I
done.
might have just put that on
Right,
checks on.
right. So I've instituted a totally different marking system whereby we number, you may have noticed, we actually number the takedowns, and there's a tag with that number, an aluminum tag that I nail to the tree. It prevents people from just willy-nilly marking it. It doesn't prevent that, but it prevents us from using that as our indication that that's a tree.
And what's the criteria, once now you've realized this had happened, and now you have a system, but what is the guideline, what's the rule, what do you go by, once you've done that? How much time do you take to remove the tree?
It depends on the tree, and clearly if something about the condition of that tree leads you to believe that it can't wait, it's something that I would ask Public Works to take care of, maybe immediately, conceivably immediately. But there is obviously a gray area, and it's difficult to, any tree that you mark indicating that it needs to come down does put the town at some risk, and we can't do every tree the next day. That's just impossible.
Okay, so then I understand that,
So there's-
and I do, but
Yeah.
who makes the decision? Are you the sole guy?
Yeah, as far as
And
trying
how
to
long
make
has
it.
it been, just you, or before you, it was Mr. Lovell, I guess, right?
Right. I try to make, given, I've been a licensed arborist now for over 25
Right.
years, and have really kind of focused my professional understanding of trees in this hazard arena. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, I have done, research on wood decay, and I've been an expert witness in cases where
Oh,
people
you're
get
well
hurt.
qualified, but you're one man. I
Right.
think that we, as a council, need to understand that what we've heard, and you are just one guy.
It is
So we
somewhat
need to
subjective.
look
I
at
will
this
tell you that
separately.
there's, and Sean made a good point, every situation is totally different. There is no cookie cutter answer for every situation. Some of what goes into my decision making is whether there are targets present. And a tree, in my estimation, over the bus stop at a busy corner deserves a lot more attention than one that's up on one mountain, with very little traffic coming by.
And then
But
my
with
last
that
question,
said,
I don't wanna keep you
And
talking
he
to
also
me.
gets some help from his assistant also.
Well,
Yeah.
that's good, but the two trees that came up tonight, and we all know about the one on East Street and the unfortunate big district, were either of those trees marked to be removed or
on
trimmed?
East Street, well, the East Street, I believe the one you're talking about is a state tree, the one that was in
Sean
front,
mentioned.
that was in front of Main Moon. It was a private tree, but it was on the state's right of way. So it is not a tree that even would have fallen under this ordinance because of the fact that it was not within falling distance of a town road. And that is one of the cases that I was called
very tragic, not unlike what you just heard about. So these things do happen, and there are implications to leaving dangerous trees around. Now, with that said, if I can just make a couple of comments. Since our last meeting and hearing some of the great comments tonight, and giving more thought to this issue of the $250 fine, which, by the way, I didn't come up with, I'll defer to Randy on that one, but I do think that because we have a mechanism within the ordinance to see that the tree is, the hazard is mitigated and that the property owner rightfully bears the cost of that, it does make me believe that there's some redundancy in this fine versus a lien if necessary on a property owner. So I think that's good food for thought for all of you in considering this. I would also, a couple of comments came back to this idea that if you have a tree that is dead, let's say, completely dead, no leaves on it, this time of year you don't have to be an arborist to know what a dead tree looks like, and you have limbs that are extending over the public road. I do have jurisdiction over those limbs that are within the right of way. The problem is, there is no, I would not ask a contractor to take those limbs off and leave the rest of the tree. First of all, you're doing very little to truly mitigate that problem. That tree can still fall over and kill somebody. Second of all, I wouldn't ask a contractor, and any qualified contractor wouldn't do it if I did ask, to just take those limbs. One of the rules, and I'm sure Sean will vouch for this, if you touch a tree, in many respects you own it, quote unquote, own it. You can't walk away from a situation like that in good conscience, and if that tree the next day failed and killed somebody, whoever was up in the bucket working on that tree is most certainly going to be cited. So I would never ask our town contractor or any other contractor to do work like that. You really have to address the whole problem. With that said, I want to make it clear this is something that I envision as being a really rare circumstance. I do not see this being used in any great number of cases. Of course, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and you have a new tree warden that sees it differently and will operate based on the wording of the ordinance. So I think it is important to consider who's a tree warden, what's his qualifications, is he going to be punitive in going around assessing these situations? I certainly am not. I do my best to work with every property owner to do whatever the town can do within reason without doing private tree work. But that is a concern. No question about it.
Mary Jane?
This is obviously a very serious consideration, and as I said the last time too, I was against the $250 fine, and I still am against that. I agree that, this is a definite priority, and it's very sad to see somebody be injured or lose their life as a result of a tree. A perfectly healthy person that dies as a result of this is very sad. So we have to obviously do something, and I think it's imperative that if the tree looks bad and the owner is against taking it down, and the town has the right to come in and take it down ASAP. But I think as far as the homeowner goes, there are just a lot of people that, as we heard tonight, that are struggling and cannot afford $3,000 to have a huge tree taken down. And I think as a town, we have to come up with a mechanism to and offer them some way to repay the town, taking the tree down. So give them a year, give them 18 months to pay it off. I think we can come up with some kind of mechanism to alleviate pain to the tree down, because it's a big hit to a family's budget if you have to take one tree down or two tree downs, and you have somebody else take several trees. It's a lot of money. A lot of people just don't have that kind of cash to just flat out lay out on trees. So I think we can come up with some kind of a plan, maybe even possibly based on their income, bring in 3 years of tax returns. I mean, this is something that our panel can come up with and decide how to fairly charge somebody. Because if somebody that doesn't have much income to start with, it's going to be pretty hard to put a squeeze on.
I'm sensitive to what you're saying.
A very serious issue, and I'm all for taking down dangerous trees for you.
there was some discussion at the last meeting regarding that, and one of your colleagues made a comment which I agree with. It is unfortunate when particularly you have someone elderly in a home that can't pay, for what could conceivably be expensive tree work. I would say that if the town were to do the work, it would be at the town's rate, which is an exceptionally low rate to do tree work, number one. Number two, and a comment was made, Tom, might be raised, I don't remember, about a lien. It sounds rather harsh, but in effect, it's a good mechanism for someone who cannot pay, so that that money will be, the town will be made whole eventually when that property is sold. If an elderly person, a homeowner passes away, the estate will have to sell whatever liens are on the property. So in some respects, there is that to consider. I do think your point is well made, and I know the percentage, the accumulation, I think is 8%, which to me, again, does add up quickly if somebody's not able to pay that cost of the tree. So something else for us to be pretty well considered.
Beth?
Yes, echoing the same sentence, I don't want to think on further reflection and hearing everyone define some definitely have to revisit those and think considerably about how to do that fairly justly, but also balance on the fact that we don't want the town to be a tree service, but there's a balance and we really need to consider that, absolutely. There were a number of comments made about the time period. Now, I know you're only invoking this really in extreme circumstances, but there are situations where people, 11 days isn't a very long time to turn things around. Do you think that there should be consideration in changing that as well, or is this suitable because it's an imminent date?
Again, I guess the way I envision this is my first approach would not be sending somebody a certified letter. I would make every effort to speak with the owner, look at the situation with them, convince them that this is a hazard, this could kill somebody. You're now on notice. The fact that we've had this conversation, and I told you before, every conversation that I have, every tree that I look at, I make notes, time, all contemporaneous notes. So I would think that a responsible property owner would act just based on that. But there are situations, conceivable situations, where you have a landlord, absentee owner, not responsive, thinks that the town will just take care of something.
It was an addition by Joe.
I think we're all humans here, and if you were to find out that somebody was away on vacation, I just can't imagine, other than if we did feel that it was an imminent situation, and somebody was going for a month, and we felt like, hey, last night somebody's windshield was broken, this is now in our laps, we really need to act. This can't be something like that.
So I think my concern is the way it's worded here. We know you take that time into consideration, and it's very much appreciated, but if it's not you and someone else reads this differently,
Right.
you wouldn't know that reading here,
Right.
that you went through all those steps first.
Agreed.
So
Can't argue
you
with
do
that.
have a statement down here about imminent hazard,
Right.
so maybe we need to reconsider the 11th day here to protect in all situations, just in case it's not you, it's someone else, and maybe they don't do the same diligence that you do. I think that's definitely something to consider there. And then the other question I had, I know there were a number of homeowners here expressing concern about becoming of private lands and making determination on their property.
I
Do you care
can't,
comments on that?
yeah, I can't conceive of a situation where I would, these are trees that are clearly visible from the road. This is not something where I'm poking around in somebody's backyard. These are trees that are, within falling distance, overhanging a public road. I don't need to go on private property to see a dead tree, and I'm not gonna, we're not talking about trees that are debatable. Oh, it's not doing well, it didn't leaf out that well. No, we're talking about stone dead, trees that are clearly a hazard. It is not a guess that they're gonna fail. They're gonna fail, and they're gonna fail in the near future. And I think that, the public, some very potent comments from someone who's experienced this on the receiving end. I think the public on our rights of way, be they in a car or a bicycle or walking, deserves that if something's brought to our attention, or it's, very obvious, something that I see, we had one recently, many of you probably noticed it, driving down Grove Street, ginormous sugar maple, dead as dead can be. It's just not something, I looked at the survey, private tree, we had to, we something, and that was one of the reasons that this was brought up, and we didn't really have a mechanism to deal with it. It was an absentee owner, so we really didn't have the mechanism to deal with that. And, you know, as I said, you really heard right from somebody who's been on the receiving end of how dangerous these situations can be. So I think this is a small step in the right direction. I greatly appreciate the comments that have been made and your thoughtful consideration. I'm very sensitive, believe me, to the financial impact. Tree work is not cheap. Adding to a $250 fine is, I think perhaps goes beyond what we need to do here to accomplish
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Paul?
Are you aware of any trees that you've marked that we haven't taken down right now in town?
Sure.
So, because we haven't taken them down,
Yeah.
say it falls tomorrow and kills someone,
Right.
are we now liable?
I think what a court would look at is when was it marked? Do you have a program that's diligent and memorializes every visit that I make to a property to look at a tree? Was there an assessment of whether that tree was an imminent hazard or could wait until the next group of trees that we were taking down? I'm uncomfortable with letting anything go more than a month. That to me is, starts to put us in a bad place in terms of that question. But as I said earlier, one of the difficulties is when you do identify and mark a tree, it's very rare that I'm gonna say that tree has to come down tomorrow. There's an expense to that, it has to be done on an emergency basis. Scheduling is, you know, traffic control, all those things that go into it, very difficult to do. We like to group the trees that we're gonna take down so that the town's contractor can go from spot to spot to spot with the assistance of Public Works in terms of traffic control or using a loader to pick up the wood and so forth.
Aren't there trees on Espetuck Ridge though from like last year that haven't been taken down yet?
I don't believe so. The only tree on Aspetuck Ridge is one that we did some work to last year, but I did mark one. I believe it's on the list for the next
So,
one.
how many trees do you think in town right now would meet the definition within our right of way and on private property?
Living or dead?
No, meaning the definition of a nuisance.
None that I know of. Personally, I mean, we could take a ride right now and within, you know, a matter of 100 yards, we could find one.
Yeah.
I don't, as a rule, except within the town center, very difficult to just drive roads and start, I would bankrupt the budget within a week.
Well, I think that's just, I guess that's what I don't understand, is we're focusing on the lack of effort that, where it doesn't appear there's a pressing need for it immediately. I mean, I heard from Sean and I saw your minutes from
Yeah.
the last meeting where in the future there certainly is. What about, say there's deed restricted land along the side of the property line where it's deeded open space, there's conservation easement, but they can't take what if the language doesn't afford them the opportunity to take down any trees, even if they're dead, dying, or diseased?
Yeah,
Do they get fined?
I can't imagine that somebody, that an owner, be it an association, whoever the owner of that land is, would be resistant to taking down something that they have been notified could fall on the school bus.
No, they're restricted by deed. We do place a lot of conservation easements for tax write-off purposes. Now the language allows the opportunity to remove dead, dying, and diseased trees, but
Yeah.
historically it did not, probably 15, 20 years.
I guess if I was
So
the
they would
owner,
they would have no legal right to take down the tree.
yeah, I
Who
guess
came up with the
I would
two-
wonder who would prosecute you.
No, I know. Who came up with the $250 fine?
And
How did you arrive at that?
Legislature.
They recommend
It's the
200.
highest amount allowed by the legislature,
Okay.
and it matches, the child protection ordinance,
Okay. But it's 50 times what our current sidewalk fine is.
I believe.
Yeah. Who came up with the 8% interest? Considering we borrow money at what, like 1 or 2%?
I didn't.
That's consistent with the blight ordinance.
Okay. The enabling statute 148C7E, I couldn't find that. Could someone provide us with a copy of that? How do you determine if a tree's within the right of way?
not easy sometimes, and there's, without a survey,
Yep.
it can be difficult to do. Sometimes it's very obvious if there are, you know, the traditional stone walls 50 feet apart, the road traffic travel portion of the roadway is perfectly down the center, and you have something between the edge of the road and the stone wall, I make the assumption that's a town tree, and I think it's usually a pretty fair assumption not to say.
So if you make that assumption without the benefit of the title search, you find these people, the tree's not on their property, it's their recourse. Because as someone who owns a land surveying firm, that is not the level of due diligence you would do to determine whether or not a tree's on the town's property.
Yeah, and
That would be a major disservice to every single taxpayer in town.
Right. But I thought you were asking me about when I would determine it's a town tree, so nobody would have an issue with that, right?
On private property,
Yeah, if
Vice
it's on
versa.
the other side of the stone wall,
yeah.
and there were some indications, markers, town records, something,
Yeah.
you know, that would clearly indicate that it was well away from the right of way.
Yeah.
My attitude is where there are records that are not clear, I always err on the side of the homeowner, give the
Yeah.
homeowner the benefit of the doubt.
In section 5C3E, when there's an immediate and serious harm, it says that you may inform the mayor and chief of police, and with their advice and consent, order the hazard removed. Do they have any qualifications with respect to the immediate danger of the tree?
No, I think it's a sort of a checks and balances, issue to make sure that I'm not going
Well,
around making
The reason for
unilateral
that
decisions.
is you have the highest ranking civil officer and the highest ranking police officer.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, personally, I think the police chief should be dealing with some other issues in town right now. I posed this question, I posted the ordinance online, just to get people's input relative, to the ordinance, because I think sometimes we lose sight of what the actual public thinks. Carlos was kind enough to comment on one of the thread, but there's actually over 11 pages of comments, from the homeowners, and I happen to wholeheartedly agree with them. It seems like the people that we're punishing, well, we're basically punishing people who can't afford to take down the trees. If they could afford to take down the tree, as we've heard tonight, they take down the tree. These people want to take down the tree. The $250 fine a day, as Lisa Alexander pointed out, could basically be food for a family of 4 for a full month, and we're proposing to fine them that per day. I think the intent is great, but I think the way that it's proposed to be implemented is absurd, with all due respect. And I wholeheartedly hope that everyone will read through the comments, since over 70 people took the time to offer their opinions to us. And after all, we represent the constituents of the town, not the other way around.
Good.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Keith?
Thank you, Mayor. Carlos, thank you for coming back again tonight. I did myself have a couple questions. First was our budget this year 70,000 or 100,000?
100.
100. And the year before it was 100, right?
Yeah, a little bit
So
less.
within those, the 100,000, what do we do with the 100,000?
It's almost entirely takedowns. You know, there's very little that we do in the way of pruning. It's just not something that we can afford to do. I do some, you know, minor stuff here and there on trees that I think are of particular value, the green, you know, around the town center, but really, we just can't afford to do anything beyond takedown work.
And kind of just getting a sense of what you're saying. A few minutes ago, you were saying that you felt that this wouldn't be something that you would be doing a lot.
Yeah, I can't see doing this. It's a really blue moon situation. To have somebody who was so obstinate and so irresponsible that they would ignore, you know, what I think would be a valid opinion. You have a dead tree, it could fall, you have kids, you have cars. It's hard to even envision somebody being that irresponsible.
And when you visit the homeowner now, and you talk to them, what do you consider the number one reason why they would not take the tree down?
You know, I think really to many of your comments, it goes back to the money involved. But I have run across that very, very infrequently. And quite frankly, the people who have been most willing to sort of posture that way can't afford it. Can't, C-A-N, can't afford it. And they are looking for a freebie from the town. And so, as much as we like to think of all of our fellow residents as kind-hearted and responsible and so forth, there are granted a very small minority, but there are property owners who even, given the means and given the information that they have a dangerous situation, would choose to just rather sit on it and hope that somebody else does something about it or falls the other way. And, you know, the wrong tree in the wrong place, and you can end up with real tragedy. So I do think it's important to have this in our toolbox. I don't see using this, I would be shocked to use this once a year. I think that would be a lot.
Mayor, one of the things I would like to see us maybe something we can look at is first, are there any kind of grants or any kind of state or federal funds that allow for a homeowner at a discounted rate to be able to access something like this, similar to what you do on your energy bill, if you have to energize or something like that. Number two, if not, maybe we could set up something like that in the town itself, but it would be based on income, asset. So where if someone truly could not pay, if there was a mechanism that it could either be a 0% interest loan or something that would benefit. But I also believe that, I know you talked about the charge would be a town charge. I believe it should be the market rate, whatever the market rate is, because we don't want to put out people's rate. That's what they do for their business. But I think if we can overcome the one obstacle, the major obstacle you talked about, which is affordability, I think that go a long way to helping solve the problem. With that being said, as we talked about before, I have a big concern with the fines, especially a couple of years ago in October, when we had that real bad snowstorm, whatever it was, and tons of trees fell, and everyone was working 24/7. And I think we're asking for a big recipe for a lot of problems when, you know, somebody's not coming for, a month to come take down the tree. So I think that's something I think we as a council should look at, and I also believe 8% is a little steep myself. But thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Walter?
Gee, this is no form of a motion to table this until we can do some more homework on it.
I'll make a motion.
Wait a minute, let's let everybody
Let's
have
finish
input.
the talk.
Everyone didn't get a chance to.
Well, let me speak to it then. Because obviously Houston, we have a problem here. Apollo 13 certainly had a problem. The question of insurance was brought up. I have 2 ash trees in my yard. They're blighted. So I called up the insurance company. Hi, help me. I got 2 ash trees in my yard. We're not going to do anything unless they fall on the house or in the road. So there's the question of liability. There's the question of, the onus is on the property owner. And insurance, timetable. I really have a problem with 5C, 3C, and D. It says the owner shall be liable to pay a civil penalty to the town in the amount of $250 for each day that the nuisance shall thereafter continue. Each day that nuisance continues to exist shall constitute a separate offense. Joe was on vacation for 14 days. I just got back. Suppose I got a notice, and I'm only 2 days into my 2-week vacation. And then it goes on, the director of finance shall forthwith bill the owner and shall record a lien on the land records. Such charge shall bear interest at the rate of 8% per annum. Paid. These charges shall be in addition and exclusive of any civil penalty. Lisa, I couldn't afford $3,000 to take down 2 ash trees. So what do? You go out and borrow money. Well, this needs to be tweaked. I understand the intent, and I certainly would not want that to happen to me or anyone. I got a problem with the process. So if they call for a vote on this tonight, I certainly will vote no. It just needs to be tweaked. The fine is an unusual burden to the property. By the way, there is a tree on Route 7, the trading post. I don't know if any of you have seen that tree. That tree needs some serious attention. It's gonna fall in the road, and that sits right on that side. And there's a big orange dot on it, and that's been sitting there with this big orange dot. And that's going, it's a Y, and one of those branches gonna come through.
Again, that's a state right away, so it wouldn't.
Yeah, well, that is a problem.
No.
Yes. Okay, I'll keep quiet.
The state has learned the hard way. You know, they've been on the receiving end of a serious lawsuit about fatalities and
Okay.
Thank you, Walter.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sure.
Frank?
My first comment is that there's a lot of questions that I have that have nothing to do with this ordinance, but the conversation that's come up about how we manage the tree situation. I would like it sometime for you to come back and say, what's your plan? We have 69 miles of road. There's no way you could physically do that. Even if you did it for a year, if we had a big storm, you'd have to go and do it all over again. So I would like to see a plan that maybe he can't do it, but maybe we can hire consultants to take certain portions of the town, cover it, so that we're covered on this. That's what I'd like to see. And I'm glad I see body language from Randy that he doesn't really want to vote on this tonight, and that's fine.
Well,
One of the-
it was not prepared for
You gotta address
vote.
that, this is a draft. You're
Yeah.
supposed to be
Okay.
debating, not voting.
That's what we're, this is what we're doing.
Going back to Mary Jane's comment in the beginning about covering the cost, and listen to what Carlos said, why couldn't we, in the contract that we put out the bid for the companies, the private companies that bid on the removal of the trees, put a stipulation in there, if we deem a private tree to be taken down, would they do it at the cost that they bill the town? Put it right in the contract. So therefore, they're not on the hook for $3,000. They would get a much reduced price. And if you're only talking once or twice a year, I mean, that's not a big deal to handle. We don't need the fine. We don't need a fine at all. We just go in and take the tree down, and then we work about how the person's going to pay for it, and he's going to get it at a reduced rate. It's not as big an issue. And I think a lot of the objection was at $250. I don't think you need it. If it's only talked about once or twice a year, my God, you're talking about something that doesn't need to be fixed. Now, Randy.
Randy?
Yes, I have a question for Randy. If a tree is marked by the warden as hazardous, and the homeowner has insurance, does that give a leg up on them having to pay for the removal of the tree?
Them being the homeowner?
Yeah.
No, I don't think the issue of insurance has anything to do with it. Because insurance pays for a loss or casualty. It doesn't pay for maintaining the
Expected.
property. You can't expect the insurance company to pay for maintenance of the property. If they did it, they would have done voluntarily to avoid risk. So it's really not a contractual obligation.
And my last point, this happened to my son. Somebody mentioned the idea where a tree came down, Linden. A tree came down, but it was her tree, and it went in the neighbor's yard, and the neighbor's responsible. That happened to my son, huge tree, and the neighbor was on the hook for it. It begs the question, if a tree comes down on a road, we have to take it down. It's our responsibility, even though it's the homeowner's tree. So if you think about it from that standpoint, we have some skin in the game here. So I don't think it's all the homeowner. I think we can work out a reasonable compromise where the town would help, because we're removing the liability that the town has. So really, we're taking out insurance against having to pay a big fine down the road. So spend a few dollars, get a tree removed, don't worry about the $250, get it taken care of, and I think we'd be ahead in the long run. And not to mention the fact that people might like that we're being proactive and using their tax dollars wisely.
Good, Frank?
Yeah.
Quit now while you got the applause. Joe?
I'd just like to start us moving this in a better direction, so I'm gonna make suggestions as to perhaps where we can make changes in here, and we can take it from there and reconsider. But 5C3 subparagraph
Would
B.
you do me a favor, if you don't mind? We have one councilman who's on my list who hasn't gotten to speak to it at all yet. Would you mind letting Tom go?
32 seconds.
Go.
Thank you, Mayor. I have read all these comments online. I appreciate the intent of this ordinance. I look at it differently than I did at the last meeting. If we are saying we may have one situation a year, one, maybe two, and the average tree takes $3,000 to take down, within a year or two, we're gonna be $100 million town budget. We normally have a substantial surplus. If we can't afford to spend $3,000 to take a tree down without finding somebody and eliminate our liability for people getting crushed in cars, kids getting hit on at school bus stops, I think we're kidding ourselves. We're the town of New Milford. We are here to take care of the people. Normally, I'm a guy who crosses every I, crosses every T, and dots every I, and wants to spend the money incredibly wisely. I would like to stretch $1 to $2. But in this instant, we have to have an ordinance that the tree has to come down. We should go and take the damn tree down. Okay, and stop trying to just pass the cost on to everybody. If we're talking about 1 tree a year, if it's 2 trees a year, if it's 3 trees a year, we waste more money in a million other ways, governmentally, not us, but many other towns do, okay? People waste money all over this country on stupid stuff. Why don't we just spend the money, take the tree down, and we would have been done with this. I'd like an ordinance to make sure that you have the ability to warn them, to tell them. I know exactly, your comment before was very telling. It's never the people that can't afford it that fight this. It's always the rich guy with the Ferrari in the garage that doesn't want to spend 5 cents. He's always looking for the dollar from somebody else. So I don't know how we isolate him and make him pay for the tree because he can't afford the tree. But I think overall, the average person who's got some of these trees on this property, let's just take the tree down. What are we doing here? Seriously.
Yeah.
4 seconds.
That was 15 seconds, I'm sorry.
Joe, I'm sorry, you told me 4 seconds.
Let me make these suggestions and see where we can go from there. 5C3B, the 10 days, move it to 21, 11 days, move it to 22. Remove all of subparagraph C, the punitive paragraph, which is all the fines. In paragraph D, I just off the top of my head, everybody says 8's too much, let's move it down to 5. And the last sentence in paragraph D has to come out. These charges shall be in addition to and exclusive of any civil penalty imposed in C. Since we take out C, we take out that line, and then we go from there. See what we think about it from that point.
Katie?
Carlos, now that this has become more public than the public knowledge that we all may have had in the past, how would we, as taxpayers, get a hold of guidelines, the kinds of things that you have very nicely told us and that you look for? How would I know? I have a lot of trees along a long stretch of road, as many people in this room do. And I can tell a dead tree, but maybe I can't tell every dead tree. And I know what happened in Massachusetts with the yellow ash and the longhorn beetle. And so, what could you put up? Maybe just copies of things or something. Maybe we could access it through the town website somehow to give people some idea what to look for. Because if you're aware, it isn't a shock when you knock on the door and say, by the way, that's a dead tree out there, because I have larch trees, they look like everybody thinks they're dead. Carl has some up the street, and they're not. So is there any way that would be easy, maybe not easy, but just maybe a little comprehensive way to put some information out there that homeowners could read?
Yeah, and I don't wanna make my phone ring because I'm
No, I don't want them to
already
call you.
overwhelmed, but, when people do have questions about trees that they believe are town trees or may be town trees, I go and see them.
No, but what if I think it's mine? I have them all along the road, I don't wanna cause an issue, and if I can get it trimmed, to get it taken down, whatever, I would like to be able to be proactive.
Have you met Sean?
Right, but I haven't something in place and this is a good process. I would ask you though, has there ever been a time when you asked someone to take a tree down and they refused, and then the town had to go and take it down?
Well, no. But I will say that there have been plenty of times where property owners have said to me, well, it's gonna fall in the road, and you're gonna clean it up anyway. So, you know, it's your problem, I'm not gonna do anything about it. This is after calling me. And I am forced to tell them, I'm making notes about our conversation, and if this tree falls and hits somebody in a car after you know about it, and it's not a town tree, it's your tree, they're gonna come after you. And my notes are discoverable. Everything that I do as a town agent are
But
discoverable.
in fact, and I think that's terrible, but in fact, we've not had it where someone has actually refused to take down something you said was a public safety
Yeah,
issue.
there has been, it's not all that frequent, but there have been situations like that, and the trees miraculously come down.
Okay, so
After
we
that,
don't need to.
after I let them know
We need
that-
to handle this, but we don't need to lose sleep between now and our next council meeting, that there are trees out there.
No, no, but I do think we're big town. A lot of
Yeah.
comments here have sort of put this in context. We're a big town, largely rural, a lot of roads that don't get the attention they need, small tree budget. We're on the verge of Emerald Ash Borer moving into town, and that is going to be, there are going to be many of these cases where people have trees that are next to the stone wall, on their side of the stone wall, their property, that they may call me about. And there may not be a stone wall to determine or give an indication as to where the town's right of way is. I'll try to do some research, work with the town engineer to figure out where the right of way goes. I may have to give them bad news. Hey, I'm sorry, this isn't a town tree, it's clearly on your property.
And just one last thing, we all seen Lewis tree trucks around since the bad October storms, and you brought it up, and their job is to clip the limbs and things that are potentially gonna fall on wires.
Yeah.
Is there any way to work with them? I mean, do they give you feedback
Oh, yeah.
if they see something and they know that
They
they
do,
say something?
and I must tell you, we have benefited greatly from Lewis. I have really done everything I can to get value out of them being in town, because while it is true that if a tree is across the street from the wires, they typically won't deal with it. There have been many instances that I have looked to them, pleaded with them to work with us. We've provided traffic control, we've provided a loader, can you provide the bucket, we'll do the cleanup, that sort of thing. So we do work cooperatively.
Thank you. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, just one point that I didn't bring up, as to my point of having the contractor under contract with us to do the removal. If a homeowner has to take a tree down, they probably don't do this every day, so it's a new experience, so they gotta get bids. They're not gonna have one company come out, they're gonna have to have 2 or 3 companies to get a legitimate price. I don't know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however long that takes. If we go with this proposal, the tree warden can say, I want this company to take that tree down tomorrow, and it'll be done, and it'll eliminate the hazard. We'd be allowing the hazard to be shorter by having it this way. If we go through a tree contractor that's employed by the town, you can direct that contractor to take the tree down much, much sooner than if the homeowner has to do it on his own by getting bids, et cetera, et cetera.
Again, I think if it was imminent and the homeowner agreed that, this is something that a big gust of wind is gonna take this broken tree down, it's clearly something that could happen tonight or tomorrow. I think I try to work with the homeowner to arrange for our contractor to come out and take care of that.
I think Katie was also looking though, is there some kind of handbook or a website or something to direct people to look for indications that maybe a tree is stressed and it might behoove them to have someone come and take a
Yeah.
look.
I think there are some things that could, I learned a lot about trees in Massachusetts, so when you hear them talk about some of the signs of deterioration and you think, oh my God, I got 3 trees like that sitting in the backyard. I mean, I never really thought about it before, but I think there are a lot of people who just love our trees, but we don't think about them until it's too late. So maybe if something could be forwarded and like go on the town website, I'm sure the mayor's office would be happy to.
One of the problems with that is just the incredible volume of species of tree has specific tree pests, specific
And maybe a
funguses.
link to the Yukon site.
Yeah.
They have an excellent site about things like that. There's one up in Massachusetts also that is good. I just think that a lot of people don't know where to go, and taking the time and effort to contact 3 or 4 Sean's, you know, it's a lot of time that people don't have.
Yeah.
And it might be daunting to think they're gonna find out bad news, that maybe, you know, you can find just about anything on the internet, but I would think if you were to guide them, it would be better information.
Yeah, and as I said, I'm very willing to spend time with people, looking at their trees and thinking with them. I don't want to be in the business of private tree work. We have a number of very qualified contractors in town, one of them sitting behind me. So, you know, I want to make sure that we don't get in the business of doing private tree work. I think that's important.
Right, thank you. Pete?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion that we table, the possible action for the creation of hazardous tree ordinance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we'll continue this and gather some more information, and we'll put together the notes. Thank you for all the comments. And Joe? You wrote yours out?
Scribbled all over. You can interpret it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll go back to our previously scheduled agenda, so if you were only here for the trees, we won't be discussing trees anymore tonight. Item 3 is approval of prior minutes. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain? Item 4 are appointments. Pete?
I'd make a motion, for Jennifer Lepari to the Library Modernization Committee, 8/10/2015 to 11/25.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I think we used up all the comment time, so I'll give you guys a break. And move on to item 6, which is personnel executive session, inviting in the attorney for the union negotiations, Ken Taylor. And that's it. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So we're gonna go in executive session, if you guys could wait outside, we'll. 7 is the Western New England Greenway update on the multi-segment.
I guess that's all we need to hear.
That's right, there you go.
Bike route linking New York City and Montreal.
Thanks for your patience, though.
Thank you for having me. We have handouts for everybody, because it usually takes me 20 minutes in a PowerPoint to get through this stuff, so I'll get as fast as I possibly can. My name is Tom O'Brien. I live at 134 Wellsville Avenue in New Milford. I'm the president of the New Milford River Trail Association, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, whose mission is to advocate for the completion of a greenway trail for walking and biking that we hope will someday follow the Housatonic River from Gaylordsville all the way to Brookfield, off-road as much as possible. I've been working on this project for almost 6 years now. But soon after I got started, I was delighted to find that we aren't alone in this process. It turns out there's 3 other organizations along the Route 7 corridor in Western Connecticut that have been actively working to build trails and make the roads safer for biking. Starting from south to north, that's the Norwalk River Valley Trail, the Still River Greenway in Brookfield, and if you've been through the Four Corners, you've seen that construction has started on their trail, which is going to be a magnificent two-mile-long paved trail. That's the Still River Greenway, our trail, the New Milford River Trail, and then north of us, the Housatonic Covered Bridge Trail, which plans to go from the New Milford border all the way to Canada. And the same is true in Massachusetts. There's 3 or 4 groups up there. Vermont is the same way. So naturally, we all started talking and realized that we need to work together on this project. And 3 years ago, we all gathered in Bennington, Vermont, at the Bennington Museum, and we formed an organization called the Western New England Group. And our goal is to create a safe bike route that runs along the Route 7 corridor, while avoiding Route 7 as much as possible from Long Island Sound all the way to the Canadian border. And by extension from New York City to Montreal, using on the south the East Coast Greenway, and on the north the route for in Canada, which leads into Montreal. Our first success with the Western New England Greenway this year, we've created a series of maps. We call it Ride It Now maps, which basically are the roads you can ride right now from Norwalk all the way to the Canadian border. And what you have in your hands, they were hot off the press. There's 6 maps that you can go down to Norwalk tomorrow and take a week and have a lovely ride all the way to the border. I just got finished doing that with my son. I think maybe you might have seen some press. There's some press clippings in your thing as well. The other thing that's very fortunate is this Ride It Now route has been picked up by the United States Bicycle Route System, which is a joint effort between AASHTO, the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, and the Adventure Cycling Association to designate safe bicycling routes. And we have been given, if you look in here, I've even highlighted, we have actually been given a number, USBR 7. So they have mapped out the corridor, and this Ride It Now route will be the route. The next step, we have succeeded in Connecticut with getting approval from state DOT, which was a little bureaucratic. It took us a little while. You may be surprised about that. DOT is bureaucratic. But we've gotten their blessing, and I'm very delighted to thank Mayor Murphy, who is the first public official in Connecticut to give us her blessing. So Milford has signed off. And as soon as the rest of the towns that this route passes through all sign off, same with Massachusetts and Vermont, this will be an officially recognized bicycle route, which will bring bicycle travelers to this region through our downtown. So you'll see a lot more people with bags on their bikes coming through, or with vans following them, stopping at the green, having lunch, spending money in our town. And I can attest to that because I said we just finished the 3rd annual Western New England Greenway. I rode with my son. We represented the Milford River Trail. We left Norwalk 2 weeks ago Sunday. We arrived in Burlington a week later. And I got an email from the ride leader, Terry Burke, who said they added up all their expenses, him and his wife, and they said they spent $2,000 during that week. Just during that week in restaurants, lodging, everything else. Now they like to splurge, they like wine and fancy restaurants. You know, I sure hope that our visa bill when it comes in isn't anywhere near theirs, but I know it's going to be substantial. So these types of improvements is very important for small town economies. So I hope you'll support the Western New England Greenway. I hope you'll take the time to look at the handouts I gave you. And I just have a couple of quick asks for you, because our piece of it is the New Milford River Trail. So hopefully after you read this, you will agree with me that that is a valuable investment for our town. And hopefully we can work together to figure out the best way to support this project. And the one thing I'd like to invite you to do is tour the riverfront with us. And as a group or one at a time, we'd be glad to pile into a van, take a look at some spots, and talk about where this trail might go. Because I think we have some tremendous potential in this town to build a trail. The question is where. So that's pretty much the update on the Western New England Greenway and the Milford River Trail. At this time, I'd be to answer questions.
Okay, Pete Bass?
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, thank you and your group for continuing to move this project forward. I think it's a great thing. One of the things I think is very beneficial, according to your handout here, is the economic benefits of this. If you look at Vermont, you're saying here $400 million. Take a look at Pennsylvania, it's at $60 million, 104 per person. Maybe we can just get a little bit of that as we will help our economic vitality here in New Milford. Second.
If I could point out one thing on that economic development, and the last one on the right page. The Outer Banks of North Carolina, my wife's family has been going down there since 1990. And the first year I went there, it was horribly unbike friendly. And I think they invested maybe $8 million one time, and they are reaping a return of like 10 times that every year. And if you go down, you can see bikes everywhere. So it really is the economic development potential for small towns is huge.
And also a question for you on the maps. Can these be provided as a PDF? Do you know?
They are on the website, and I think we are, the webmaster is working on, they have not yet created the smartphone version of those maps yet, but that's a work in progress. But WNEgreenway.org has the PDF version, so you can print those out.
Also, Mayor, thank you for signing up, being the first one to do that. And again, thank you. And I would like to take your offer on touring the proposed trail.
I will follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Tom, I just have to say that we are a very extremely fortunate town to have you, your son, your wife, and all of the people that you have. I mean, I remember a few years ago you came and started talking about it, and trail up in Boardman. I see all the things you do on Facebook, and I can't say enough about how wonderful it is that you bring all this information out and make people aware of it. And I've seen other towns have done this in the beautiful ways. They've cantilevered and gotten away from the roads and made fantastic trails, and I can only hope that we're
I fully believe we have some potential.
thank you.
And also, if you've not been to the Siga Meadows Trail, please go. So it's delightful, and that's thanks to Mayor Murphy, it's thanks to Public Works, Parks and Rec, and a whole bunch of Boy Scouts. Siga Meadows is now one of the most nicest places. Go there and imagine it's that trail.
Thank you, Beth.
We're just echoing everybody else, but it's great to see, you're still so passionate. Love it, love it. Congratulations on it all. I can definitely speak to the economic benefits. I've done a number of bike trails myself. It's wonderful. The business that we're bringing to town is phenomenal. Thank you for supporting it too. Keep it up. Do a great job.
Thanks, Joe.
I lived in Westchester County for a long time, and they have that bike path.
South County Trail, I think it is.
Well, now it runs from Westchester to Putnam to Dutchess, comes all the way up and continuing to move it, and encourages people like me that need to be on the bike to get out there, especially in those nice school places there. So keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mayor. Echoing the sentiments of everybody, Tom, doing a great job on this. It was good to see all those folks up there in Lincoln sometime back, having a meeting on the northern side of this.
All right.
Besides just the direct economic benefit, it's also another thing that will attract people to our community to move here. We're trying to create a community where you can live, work, and play, and this fits into the play component very
Absolutely.
well. I mean, having two young kids, trying to get them on a bike in different areas, there's not a lot of places to take them. You can only go around so many circles at Harrybrook. It's beautiful, but after a while, they want to go someplace. This is fantastic. We'll keep up the good work. I'll drive. Let's take the tour. I got something out there to take us all. Thanks.
Good.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
very much.
Great job.
Okay, next is item A, case of New Milford.
Okay, to follow somebody so positive is really difficult.
You're positive.
I'll try.
Jeff, you do a positive good job.
This is awesome.
Energy level.
So, so Jeff Kilberg with Nicholas Tobin at 111 Danbury Road. I'm seeking permission to close off the southern crossover street so we can make it safe from the Middle Green to the bandstand. And
Give yourself a plug here, you know.
oh yeah, I definitely will. Taste of Milford is coming along really well. We're going to have 30 restaurants, and we're changing things up a little bit. We're going to move the local vineyards and brewery inside the United Bank building. So that's going to stay inside. That means that you don't have to spend 2 hours putting up outside fencing, hoping that we don't hit the irrigation system in the green. So, so it's gonna make it a lot easier.
What day is this, John?
It's gonna be September 9th from 5 to 7:30.
What night of the week is that?
That's a Wednesday.
And the cost is?
The cost is, in advance, tickets are now available at the Chamber of Commerce office or Nicholas Tobin Insurance, and they are $10. The day of is $15.
Pete?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to close the southern crossover of the green on Wednesday, September 9th.
Second.
15 from 4 to 7:30. Setup, duration, and breakdown of the annual tastings.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you,
Abstained?
Jeffrey.
Thanks for all that hard work.
Okay, and one more second. So, a shameless plug. Most of you know about this. Shameless plug. The proceeds of the Taste of Milford go to the Community Culinary School, which is now in the process of a contest on safeco.com. Go to safeco.com, then look for Make More Happen on the top right, and then look for the Community Culinary School. Click on that picture, go to vote. You do that every day, every 24 hours until August 17th at noon. That's my shameless plug for this.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Ted.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ted.
Bye.
All right, item 9, Mission on the Arts, request to close the southern crossover of the green on Saturday, August 15th and 29th, starting at 5:30 for setup, duration, and breakdown of the Edwin Kincaid concerts on the green. So
Second.
it's the 15th, 22nd, minute. Any discussion? You're not me, Paul.
That's all right, we're just waiting for Mary. I think we already signed off on the first one. I guess my question is, with all these closings of the roads, do you have to come to us for this, or is this just as a courtesy to the organization?
You have the authority as the council to close the roads, unless there's
So
an
you-
emergency or some short.
Yeah, thanks.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? And item 10, economic development discussion on the tax deferral ordinance that you've all been working on. Tonight we had the public comment.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. As you can recall, we've had several meetings to discuss the tax deferral ordinance and revisions. Since our last discussion, there was only one change. It was not to eligibility or the offer amounts. It was actually in the standard offer section 19-47. And it was basically to say that eligible applicants may receive an abatement at the town council's discretion. It continues to leave everything and make it clear it's at the discretion of the council. And it was just to put may to ensure that they're not necessarily entitled to a specific amount. That this is a guide to go by, and that you can deviate from this guide should you feel it's warranted based on a number of factors involved in an economic development project.
Thank you, Katie.
We had talked about putting something in that not only that the property itself not be delinquent, but that the applicant have a good history of, in prior places, towns, whatever, a good history of doing what he says.
You mean
he
a
will.
reputable business?
Yes, reputable, that's the term. And I thought that was going to be included, but unless I just missed it, I just got that.
You're misinformed. What that was is that the applicant cannot be delinquent, but it's in your discretion in the factors that you consider to determine whether or not they're worthy based upon your discretion. Did not want to put worthy in because it doesn't have a standard.
Gotcha.
That's why we did.
And how would
Call that
we
a
know, what would be in other words, we would rely upon you or their agent or whatever to give us this information so we know, I guess the onus then would be on us to check it out.
Due diligence on it.
Okay.
And if it's, coming through the town, the tax assessor is part of the process, and we can defer to the tax collector and make sure there's no outstanding issues or payments.
I think she's also wanting to make sure that
They didn't do
that they have a
enough.
track, right, a
Right,
good track history
right.
wherever they establish.
You know, they started a business and then took off, okay. So the property is not delinquent, in any payment to taxes owed. So even if this is someone who's just purchased the property, that takes care of making sure all taxes were paid in every possible way, okay, no liens, that kind of thing. And can I ask one?
Oh, please, please.
This is very specifically, a question I had from someone in our town taxpayer, who, asked, it's very specific about what can and cannot be included. Yet, of course, the overarching thing is that it's up to the town council and it's at our discretion and to review, so how much discretion? Suppose someone was not within these parameters, but we all deemed it to be good for the town in general. Can we override that?
Isn't this council's?
That, you have, the language that we discussed this at the last, one of the two last meetings, in the sole and exclusive judgment and discretion of the town council. So you are the keeper of the key.
In all regard?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I knew you were explicit about wanting that in there.
Yeah, just,
I would use it, and obviously Randy answered that, but more as guidelines. Obviously, based on state statute, you all can provide tax incentives as you see fit, but I would use this and the amounts more as guidelines. There may
These help
be
the applicant.
yeah.
extenuating factors that may make a project more warranted than others, whether it be investment, jobs, or a potential community benefit that's not necessarily captured in this.
Pete?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the tax deferral ordinance revision that's in our packet this evening.
Second.
Paul?
Yeah, just discussion. I will be opposing the motion. There's two things that don't sit well with me. One is that the owner of the property shall not appeal the town of Milford tax assessor's real property tax assessment on the property for 3 years next following the relief period. I think it's disingenuous for the town to be providing a tax abatement and then saying, well, for 3 years, we're gonna be able to assess the property and you can't abate it. Secondly, which is
Can I
when,
ask you a
yeah.
question about that? Which paragraph was that one?
It was E on page,
It's under 1949.
yeah, 1949 E. To me, it doesn't say no open business.
Well, what I was gonna say is, there are sometimes the opportunity, if it's not a major change to the proposal, that you could make that adjustment here and
Yeah, I would
still
prefer
vote
for
on
it just being agreed to assessment as part of the package deal. We
Randy, is
may
that
not-
appropriate to have in there?
Yes, it is.
Mhm.
And
And
then-
how would
It's up to
you
you,
frame
it's actually it's up to the town council, not the town attorney, to determine whether that provision should be in.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that if you had some changes here, you still could, as long as they don't substantiate.
Yeah, I would recommend that change.
Okay.
The other issue that I'm not sure we can deal with tonight, and if I'm not voting or not voting, is what we're trying to set to new businesses that wanna either reinvest in our town and expand, or new businesses that wanna come into town. When I look at our old ordinance that's on the books, that we all agree is antiquated and may not make sense, but when we look at it, the range of tax abatement that we're proposing currently on the books ranges from 3 to 4.25 times their annual taxes. We're now decreasing that based on their investment from 0.6 to 2 times their annual taxes. So I don't understand if we're trying to attract businesses, why we're decreasing the standard offer. And I know we've all said, well, we have discretion to adjust it, we have discretion to adjust it. When I'm a business looking to invest in the town, I'm not making my investment based on potential discretion of the town. I'm looking at what's the standard offer. And to me, this is telling us we're closed for business because we're decreasing the abatement that we're proposing.
And I'm not going one way or another, but I do know that the council was presented with the rates from other communities. And so this still makes the town of New Milford, in that scenario, as competitive as somebody else with regard to.
As competitive, not more, and that's my issue.
Right.
I have that same issue.
Well, I'd say this has not come up in the 3 or 4 meetings that we've had, so that's,
I know, because what I do is sometimes we get so caught up in the minutia of things,
well,
and then today I'm like, what's our existing ordinance?
well, no, I'd say the actual amounts were well discussed by the council in length. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I brought up at one meeting, Luigi, that $1 million investment in this
And
town is gonna provide only a $13,000.
and so, and after that, there was an effort made to address that. Some of the suggestions were by the council, and in particular Councilman Esposito, which we made an effort to reflect. And I'd say going back to the original ordinance, there's no question that it's reduced. However, that was never used. My understanding, it was put in place in 2002. And in evaluating that, creating different thresholds, and making it somewhat less, it was in an effort, I think, to be somewhat responsible in other areas and not just give away 100% abatement every year.
Well, it's not somewhat less, unless,
Well, I know.
if someone makes a $50 million investment in
Can
town,
I table it?
the standard offer is 33% less than what's on the books now.
Yeah, I mean,
For less of an investment, it's on the order of 20% of what's on the books.
clearly, in 2 cases, they give 100% abatement for 3 out of 5 years. It's beyond aggressive, how I would describe it. And that that was taken into consideration when it was proposed.
Yeah. I just talked to several businesses, and, you know, we're talking to one right now that's looking to come into town. And, you know, they wanna make a several $1 million investment. And they said the tax abatement that they would get is so minuscule with all the restrictions that are placed on it, that it's not appealing to them.
Well, what are the restrictions that are placed on it? You were just referring to that for a year.
Yeah, which we can modify, but the overall amount, you know, like I had said at the one meeting, the $13,000 break and $1 million investment. To me, that's not saying come to the mill. You know? It's just my personal opinion. I mean, and it's just me and all the businesses that I deal with who we're trying to get in this town. And it's one thing that people look at when they come to a town. I mean, granted, one of many things, and I know you're trying to address things you have over the years, but,
Yeah,
I don't think it goes far.
There was an effort to look at and to be somewhat more aggressive, I'd say, in other towns, but not significantly. Paul's not incorrect in what he said with the original ordinance. At a previous meeting, we did provide probably 10 to 12 examples from around the state as something to create this as well and to show you where that fit in. But clearly, it's something that
And it basically demonstrated we definitely weren't the most competitive at all when it came to comparing us to the other towns people were proposing.
So Randy, go ahead, please come up.
I know that the graduations would be.
It's reverse.
Right?
Yes.
There's a mistake in the packet material. There's not a mistake in the legal notice, but there's a mistake in the packet material. The packet material doesn't contain the correct revised section 19-45.
That's what I was thinking. Yes.
No.
No.
Section 19-45, the real section 19-45, the one that was sent to the public hearing, talks about the broad discretion vested in the town council. That's exclusivity. That's the exclusive sole discretion. That's critical.
Let's get copies and
So that's what.
hand that out to them, that's why we're not
Right,
seeing it.
that's why it didn't look
Okay.
like it.
But it was in the notice.
It's in the notice. The notice is fine because it was a short form notice.
Yeah, this is my point. I deal with trying to get businesses in towns on a daily basis. That's what I do. My job is to find creative ways to get people to come to town and find ways to get it through. And when you tell someone, oh, well, you can come to this town and we have a lot of discretion and, you know, we're gonna help you out. They're gonna choose the town that has the most competitive standard offer, period. I can tell you that as someone who's currently involved in projects ranging from $300,000 to $30 million right now. And that's what they look at. And I don't know.
They want the best.
They want the most competitive.
Right.
They want to go to the This is one thing of many tools that we have, but we're limited geographically. You know, we're limited in many other ways, and I personally think we need a way to set ourselves apart.
I mean, there's no question, any business is gonna take a greater offer on a tax incentive. I mean, that's obvious. I mean, so you would suggest changing them to what levels?
I would suggest increasing them, so that we have, out of the 10 or 12 towns that we have, we're the best. And when that's gonna be our marketing, we're gonna say, we pulled 10 or 12 towns, we're the most competitive. When are you coming to New Milford?
You know, in New York State, there's several towns, and probably the whole state, we have a good, so in 10 years, how many just moved up the state, right?
I'm not suggesting that.
No, what I'm just saying is that if you wanna get the attention of a multi-billion-dollar
Think about it,
business-
everyone talks about it.
Everybody's talking about it.
Absolutely.
We spoke about it a few meetings ago. We need something that is substantial, that is going to blow the socks off of people. We can change it listen, if we fill up all the spaces we have, we can always change it. We have the sole discretion to do this, but I think we need more. We need almost like a better advertising campaign for this. It's gonna bring real attraction to this.
$13,000 wouldn't make.
It's not gonna make it fun.
When you put it in terms like that, I think we have to be realistic and say that, you know, if I'm gonna spend $15 million, it has to be enough to catch my interest. And whether other towns are doing it or not, they might have other facets that are attractive that maybe are more, not that we're not, but more attractive depending on the business. You should be able to offer something that makes no question whatsoever that I want to continue to talk to you.
Because they're looking at 100 other towns.
And I don't think $13,000 is enough. You talk to the people, what do you?
I don't disagree with what Paul is saying. I mean, any business is gonna look at what advantages and what you said. You know, maybe if this town has an increased incentive program than another town, it might make the site particularly more attractive. Maybe we're overcoming some transportation access issues. I mean, there's no question there's an offset. It's more of a question of what levels are you comfortable with, because this has come up before, and I was hoping previously, just because there was also a level of responsibility, which I know at previous meetings that the council was concerned with, about at what level is reasonable when taxpayers ask and other questions come up. Is it, 100% for 5 years and you just get a building built and then beyond that? I think it's.
Yeah, well, when I look at that, Luigi, I look at what they're currently doing in the town of Peck. So if we don't have business in the town right now, it's zero. If we don't attract them to come to the town, it's still zero. So if we're delaying their taxes for a couple years.
I fully understand the concept behind it.
No, I think we're in agreement.
Yes.
Frank?
I'm hearing consensus at the table that we need to sharpen our pencils on this. So I would not be opposed to the table this, and then have, come back with another proposal. I mean, a higher proposal. It's not often that this council, excuse me, I have the floor.
We can table it, and can we, what's the?
Wait a minute, I didn't move the table, I'm still not
No,
finished
I'm not
with my
asking
comment.
that.
But I'm not finished with my comment. We can always increase it. But if we don't increase it, we were talking about increasing it at the table here, that the town council can increase it. But they don't know that out of the general public. If we don't put it in the advertisement, they won't know that that's possible. So we really have to put it out front. And then we can adjust it. But if nobody takes us up on it, we don't get anything. But if somebody takes us up on it, we're going to eventually get more taxes. So if it means that we have to re-look at this, take a couple of weeks, I'm in favor.
Joe, Mary?
I've always had issues with this. I think it's a little restrictive to the retail restaurant issues. I'll say that. And one other point. I think it's a bit disingenuous to say, well, the council's already discussed this, and you guys already went through this in detail. We will go through it in detail.
detail until we get really comfortable.
I know we've all talked about it, and I know you've all heard me say this, but, you know, we're not, the economic development person, it's not our job. Paul is probably most closely related to this, but I'd really like to have you give us guidance, you know, in the best world that you could be in when someone knocks on your door or calls you and is talking about coming to this town, what would you want? I mean, I think it's one thing for us to put these percentages on here. Now we're looking at them and realizing that in just a short month and a half or 2 months, this is really not cutting it. So I'd like you to send us your thoughts on what, in an ideal situation, you would like to be able to start with. You know, everything's negotiation in this world, and so, you know, and we have more in our toolkit than just this, but it's the attractive thing of the time that people are looking for. It's what I wanted, I'd ask you right off the bat, if I was gonna put any considerable money involved. So I'd like to hear, you know, from you, if you change these levels or the years or whatever, I'd like to have you come back, you know, send us an email and tell us what you like, so we can think about that instead of us trying to reinvent an economic development wheel that's what's your job, so I rely on you to know.
Walter?
I'm with Councilman Borgo. I hear, let's table this. I'd like to make a motion to table this. I'll take a second.
When we do it at the town, just at a town meeting,
Well, we'll just have to have
another public hearing, right?
Yes. I'll take a second.
Second.
So, is it, we shouldn't table it then if we're gonna redo it, I think
No, so
we
we
should
should
vote
put a
it
motion.
down. Make a motion to
Yeah.
approve and then vote again.
Second.
Yeah, withdraw, good.
The other thing is that the public hearing we just had tonight will not be valid.
Right.
The reason for it is that there's going to be substantive changes.
Right.
Under our election forces.
So this way it's just withdrawn, it'll just die.
We just withdraw, we don't take.
He withdrew.
Okay.
Right,
That'll work.
because if you're tabling the same.
That'll work.
Right. That'll work. Thank you.
Good.
School, road.
So the next is discussion and possible action on the Scotticoke Middle School roof project. And we have representatives from the school district. Sorry, it usually doesn't take us this long to get
That's
to that.
okay, I can get it, I've been there. How are you tonight? Good evening, thanks for giving us this opportunity to talk to you about the middle school roof. I'm Jay Hubblebank, I'm the Director of Fiscal Services for the Board of Education. I have with me tonight John Calhoun is our Director of Facilities, and Steve Botello, who's from the Garland Company. We're going to be presenting you with information. We realize the time, and we'll try to, it's a big deal, but we'll try to go through it and give you the information. In June, the board of this year, the Board of Education approved the following motion to request that the mayor and town council acquire the necessary funding to replace the roof at Scotticoke Middle School and form a Scotticoke Middle School Building Committee for that purpose and to schedule the work in coordination with the Board of Education. I sent Marla a summary of the history of the project for you to review. I'm not sure if you all got a copy of that today. But in there I talked about the board had authorized the administration to seek bids on specifications prepared by the Garland Company for a project at that time that would not require state reimbursement. The current roof, and the reason for that was, at that point, two issues. One was that the current roof was designed for let's get into the roof stuff, I'll have to have the roof guy talk about, but an 1/8 inch of the pitch. Whereas the state law, and which meets all building codes and state and federal building codes and all local building codes. The state legislature a number of years ago passed laws that said any roof projects that wanted state reimbursement would need to go to a 1/4 inch pitch. It significantly changes the cost for those kind of projects if you imagine changing the pitch on a roof and items on top of the roof that you have to remove and different things. So initially we had gone out to bid on a project that would not require state reimbursement, and at the end of the presentation I'm going to go over the costs of comparisons of the two different costs of the projects. We have specific bids on the non-reimbursable, cannot go to bid on a state project without state approval of the project. So you can't get the actual actual numbers. We have estimates that we'll show you. So what we want to do now is just take a few minutes to go over the project. John's going to speak a few minutes about the background. As most of you may know, I've been here only a little over a year now. John's been here forever, so he can give you better history about the roof itself. And then Steve is going to talk for a few minutes about the actual roof. He has some information to give you about the condition of the roof and where it stands right now. So it's all right, I'll ask John to come up.
Yes, I don't have any of the information you're referring to that we received.
Only
I have this sheet.
Right,
That's right,
All right.
that's what we
I
have.
had provided, just so you know, I had provided the mayor a while back this notebook which has all the past information, the project. I wasn't sure whether that had been distributed or not, so.
No.
I didn't know.
No,
I
I
really
really
don't think one page is
Um,
sufficient.
We never had it
I can do that,
electronically.
yeah, 99% of it already is, so I can do that,
You can
yeah.
email that.
So I didn't know that whether
All
you
the
guys,
specs?
I didn't know how you guys work, so I wasn't sure.
I don't have all
All the
that.
specs are in there too?
Yes,
That's in the finance.
yeah, it's in the book part that I, so I can provide that with you if you want.
Do you have that electronically?
As I said, I think I got probably 90% of it already, so I can make the rest of it, no problem.
Hi, thank you very much. Around 2011, we started looking at this project. We were looking at our 5-year capital plan, and we began looking at various projects that needed to be included on that plan. One of them, of course, was the Scadco roof, and that was based on the age of the current roof and the conditions. So then we started looking at companies to come in and maybe do some evaluation, and that's when we made contact with the Garland Company. That really started the process. Garland is, they've got an excellent track record. They've worked with several schools, so their references checked out. So this is the process that we started. And we started the process, like I said, in 2011 by putting it on the 5-year capital plan, and then we started to bring it forward to try to get approvals for it. As you know, budgets get tough and get tight, and things get pushed aside. And so here we are today. We're still looking to do the roof, and so we're trying to seek any assistance that we can from you folks to get this project completed, so we can do the roof and get it completed.
So Steve is going to give you a few handouts about the roof itself, why we are here, what the conditions are, and then I can talk about. I'm going to also talk about what's been raised in the past in the paper and tonight about the hazardous materials in the roof. I'll talk about that, and I have a handout. It's only a 1-page handout, but on the cost to show you the comparison between the bid we got and what we project the state cost of these, and you can take a look at that.
Thanks.
All right? Okay.
Madam Mayor, I'm confused. Has this gone up to bid? No.
We have not sent anything out
We
to bid.
haven't,
This
okay.
is, the Board of Ed has decided they want to have the roof.
We're at square one then.
You are, they are not.
Okay.
We've already done it.
But it's not in
Could I have
the
one?
budget. What?
Not in the budget.
It's not in the budget, right?
The board had originally been put, and again, I don't mean, I'm not throwing this back, but the board has been putting money into a non-recurring capital account for a number of years to cover the cost of the roof.
Okay.
And then it came to our attention that, through the mayor and the finance director, that the town would be willing to consider bonding it instead and not using those funds for that. So that's why we're here. That's my understanding.
Okay.
All right?
Thank
Well,
you.
that helps you.
I just want to thank the board, John and Jay as well. My name is Steve Patello. I'm with the Garland Company. I know time is of the essence, so I sent out the packet there. Just to give you a quick update on who Garland is, we're a full-service roof systems manufacturer. We're 100% employee-owned through an ESOP. We've been doing business since 1895, and are done in Bradstreet at the 5A1 rating. So from a financial standpoint, we have a very good track record. I started, as John mentioned, I started working with the town on the school side back in 2010, 2011, in that range. And to just give you, I do have a financial statement letter in there, some local project highlights that are in there using the U.S. Communities contract. So to answer the question, has it been bid? Yes, it's been 100% bid. We already did that process. Okay, so we brought in 3 reputable contractors that we do business with to solicit the bids, and we established the low bid, and we provided a turnkey proposal to the board. Just to give you some other examples of towns we've worked with, we've done
done 2 schools in Danbury, most recently Pembroke and Great Plain. We've done, this past fall, we did a roof at the Sherman School. We've done 3 projects last year at Monroe Board of Ed through this project. We've worked with Trumbull, Newtown, Brookfield, Region 1, Region 12, and you know, there is obviously several more. To give you an example of what we do, when I worked with John said, you know what, we want to evaluate all the schools, but right now we want to focus on the one that's giving us the most problems. So he said, let's look at Scottico and let's figure out what we need to do. So we did an in-depth evaluation, and basically we came back with what the options were, and based on that, what we're able to do is put together a scope of work or specifications that makes the most sense, and then we're able to bid it through the U.S. Communities contract. The nice part is that I'm on the job every day watching the job. We are 100% responsible for labor and materials on the job, and so at the end of the day, there's really no spin doctor. I'm the guy that John's going to call if there's a roof leak, and I think he's obviously checked my references. They're pretty impactful. If we can go to the next, and again, to save time, I'd like to go to the page that has the yellow and blue. Just to give you guys an update, everything, there's 2 facets of this project. You have everything in yellow with the original construction of the building back in 1973. Okay? Then in 1990, additions were made with the blue sections. Okay? In 1990, they put on basically you had a metal deck with 2 layers of insulation and then a single-ply, white single-ply roof. At that time, the decision was made to re-roof over the first roof. So everything in yellow has 2 roofs on it. And the building was originally designed with structural slope, positive slope of all the drainage of at least an 1/8 inch. It's between an 1/8 and a 1/4 now. If we start going with additional tapered insulation that the state requires, then we start getting into a lot of other things that will significantly increase the cost of the project, such as additional drainage, raising units, cutting through wall counter flashings, getting into raising windows, a lot of that. I spent a full day with a local, there's really 2 plumbing contractors that handle most of school projects, and I brought, the town had hired him to bring him in for a day. We looked at every single roof and every option of what we can and can't do. So I don't just go put together a spec. We do our due diligence and figure out what we can and can't do and then work within that parameter. So we did that, and what we found is, this is actual for construction document. It's kind of hard to see, but it has where we're going to put in overflow roof drains, piper drains, so on and so forth. If you look at the next page, this here is a core cut showing the 1990 section. Okay, so you essentially have a metal deck, 2 layers of polyisocyanate insulation with a single-ply roof over that. The next page shows the 1973 section. Okay, you have your original roof are the 2 layers of perlite, which is kind of like a wood fiber board, but it's got volcanic rock. It's good for fire retention, so it was widely used back in that era. Then you have a 4-ply built-up roof. That was your original 1973 roof. Okay, in 1990, a 1/2 inch wood fiber board was put over it, and then it looks, I believe it's a 1 inch of polyisocyanate over that. That was all mechanically fastened, and then you had your single ply that was put on. So essentially in 1990, you had all new roofs. One of the things that we were able to do, that's a tool that we use to gauge what we can and can't do as far as whether we can re-roof it. International Building Code, we go by 2003 with 2005 enhancements, says that we can go with 2 roofs. Anything more than that, you have to go back down to the deck. So after my evaluation, I said, John, we need to do an infrared scan to find out what we have for wet insulation. So if you look at this page, that shows the scan that we did back in 2012, December 14th of 2012. You all know that bad day. I was on the roof at that day. This is what we found. We have since done another scan still go with the re-roof option on the 1990 section. So essentially, the plan is to remove everything down to the deck in the 1973 section, 100%. Remove it, abate it, get rid of it, it's done, off your roof. Everything on the 1990 section is going to remain basically your 2 layers of insulation with the exception of your single ply. Single ply would be removed. We will cut out the small sections of wet insulation you have, add the other additional layer of insulation, mechanically fastened per code, and all the window upgradings. Put the new 2-ply SPS modified system on with flood and gravel, all new edge metal, reworking all your drains, and then as far as the 1973, everything is getting done complete. So that's, in a nutshell, where we're at this point. The board has been supplied with a turnkey proposal. We did this out back in, we started I think in January, with the assumption we were going to move forward this summer. That didn't happen. The low bid installer is willing to hold his prices now through the end of 2016, as we are as well. So if it does get approved, we'd like to, in a perfect world, we'd like to get it approved, move forward in the fall with the 1990 sections, and then in the summer of 2016, do all of the 1973 sections.
Tom?
Thank you, Mayor. The current R value in this roof is what?
It's very hard to say because of this. It is wet.
Besides for the soak and wet insulation, what's up there?
The R value on
2 inches of polyiso staying range, so it's R14 up there.
It's just under 6 per, well, it's just under 6, the R value on 1 inch of polyiso-cyanide. So right now you have, I believe 3 back then it was code, it's not code zones. The new building code is R21, and there's a lot of talk to move it to R25.
Is that the proposed? It's going to be an R21 or an
We're going to do R21 or greater, because we're going to put tapered, or we're going to put big sumps around all your drains.
Yep.
Because right now you don't have drain sumps, so we're going to, all the new drains are going to sit right on the deck, and then we're going to put taper down around them until we hit the middle of the roof where that height is. So we're going to have 16-foot sumps around each drain, so it's going to be a semi-taper system.
So it's going to be a consistent, are you going to have a consistent thermal boundary on that roof so that you could have R21 over 95% of that roof, the 5% that doesn't, all the heat's going to flow right out of that spot?
Well, that's a great question. I'm glad that you brought it up. When I design a roof, I want the least amount of R value around your drains, because we all know when you have 3 foot of snow, we want those to drain. And when we lose a little bit of heat around that, that's what we want. We're going to be probably 1.5 inches at that drain, and then it tapers out, and then the rest is.
What about the loss in the cost of heating that building because of the reduction in that?
Well,
I'm an energy guy, just to tell you this out of the gate. This is what we don't do your side of the business, but we're shell specialists.
Yep.
So.
And you know, if you look at the
Right,
building.
listen, I want to see snow on the roof.
Yeah.
So I understand I understand what you're saying about trying to get those drains,
Yep.
to melt.
I have my clients call me all the time, what do I do about the roof drain? Get your guys up there, shovel around the drains. Every guy that we do sumps around, they love it because they do drain a lot better. I understand your point. Right now you have minimal R value on the old section, and we're going to increase it. We're going to go well beyond R21 average. It's going to be more, I think, like around R22 or R23 average.
I would like to see the highest R value you can get into that roof, because the more you put in there, the faster their energy bills are going to go down.
Yep.
Which is going to allow them to spend more money on the kids as opposed to spending money on oil.
Nice.
Oil is temporarily down. Let's not kid ourselves. No matter how much we drain, we do this. It's temporarily down, so everybody stays hooked on oil. And once the economies take off, we're going to be seeing stuff over $4 a gallon. So the more insulation you can put on that roof, literally right now, okay, the better it's going to be for the next 30 to 40 years out. So that's a strong comment for me. Please, I'd like to see the highest R that you can. And I understand your point about melting on those drains, but on the other side, you could, like I said, you can do the entire roof. You have a couple of openings, so all that energy is going to flow to the weakest point. And melt, so which means all the heat is going to flow to that point as well.
To your point too, when you start getting into what the state requires for reimbursement and the pitches that they have, there's no consistent R value. It's an average.
The state's way behind this.
Yeah, with this, it's
more of a uniform R value. And the other thing that we're doing is, you know, a lot of designers will put together, you know, 3.3-inch ISO and have your joints, you know, with one layer. We're doing multiple layers.
Good, good cross.
Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
It's okay, I want to take a moment to address the hazardous.
Well, there's a couple other questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Katie, okay, have you done a school roof like this, where you've covered part of it completely, where you've taken some off, et cetera, okay? For the same reasons that there was some areas that were wet, I mean, was there any other?
Probably the closest one that I did was Pembroke School. We all know Pembroke going up in Danbury. That roof, everything pitches towards the center. It's kind of a big circle, but all the drains are dead in the middle. And they had a lot of water. They had some Italian flashings around, and their deck ran towards the middle, towards the drains. So they had a high number of wet. But we were able to cut out those sections, replace it with new insulation, and then we went with an additional layer, and then re-roofed over that.
So I look at this picture, which shows your moisture analysis, and it's, you know, certainly as small as compared to the total square footage of the roof. There are small areas. So they've been wet for how long, John? Long time?
The scan was done in 2012.
No. How long do you think there's been areas?
It's hard to say. I mean,
Okay, so what's the, I guess my first question is, was the air tested? Was there any sort of testing done? What's the downside of not doing this? Because it's a small portion of a very large roof. And part of the roof, you're going to do exactly what was done in 1990, so I kind of wonder, well, are we going to be talking about, well, we won't, but somebody be talking about doing the same thing at some time in the future? So I guess, you know, I haven't been involved in the whole thing. I have one sheet of paper that I looked at, and now I'm looking at yours. But I'd like to know, why is this being done, other than there's some wet insulation?
Yeah, so you're referring to the 1990 section?
I'm saying anything. Why is it, either you or John, why?
Well, the roof, first of all, the roof is now out of warranty, so the roof is lasted, it's exceeded its useful
Well,
life.
so is my car, but I still drive it.
I understand that, but it's like we're starting to see this in the infrared scans show us that the roof is starting to break down. And as it breaks down more, we will have intrusion into the building at some point. We will have air quality issue of moisture.
Of moisture and the air quality, because it'll be moldy, mildewy. Well, where, I see PCBs, and, you know, when I see that, I think, well, there's a hot button word. So where does this come into play?
Well, PCBs is
Part of the insulation?
it's no, not at all.
And I'm gonna address that if that's.
If I can just speak to your question about.
I think a lot of people would like to know.
What we're doing differently, and again, back in 1990, if you look at that forecourt of the 1990, they left your 4-ply roof on. We're not doing that. We're removing your single ply.
I understand.
Back down to your insulation. And why are we doing that? Because why pay to have all that good insulation removed? This is just a 1990 section, blue section. Why remove 2 layers of polyiso at a premium and then dispose of it, then put it back on when we can use that as our base layer and go over that with an additional layer? So it's essentially the same component that we do, and from a warranty standpoint, it's exactly the same.
Well, what about the air quality, John? Have you done testing? Have you had the equipment in there to see if there's an issue? Where these spots are, you know, what you're talking about?
Generally, what we do is we evaluate and through visual inspection, and then of course we follow up on any issues that there may be within the building. And we have not had to date, we have not had any issues in that building with air quality.
So it's been tested?
There's been a few as random tests, as classrooms that you may have a complaint on. And again, it tends to be more of an air conditioning type of issue and a mechanical issue than a roof issue, in my experience with most of our buildings in the schools. And that's certainly the case at the Scatico. The roof has not caused us any.
So no children are at risk? No children, teachers, workers, anyone in there are at risk for any ailments or? Okay, so we're doing this because the warranty is over There's some moisture areas, and as Tom points out, there's probably some loss of heat because the R value is not up to the new R value. And the total amount of this project is $4 million or something. Am I correct in that?
2.4 million.
That's with some reimbursement from the state?
No, actually, I think, well, I was gonna get to the cost, but yes.
Well, whatever it is, it's millions we're
Yes,
talking,
it
and
is,
that's a lot of
absolutely.
money.
Right.
So, okay,
No,
I
no.
just wanna have it in my
Yeah,
head,
sure.
what is propelling this,
Well,
all of this, if we're not putting any children and teachers at risk?
Well, I think it's just, if I can speak about that a little bit, it's, part of our job, John and my job, is to look at due diligence of our facilities and maintain our buildings. And I think at this point, we're looking at a roof that's over 30 years old now.
1973.
And it's our feeling that those roofs are really just either 10 to 20 years of a life expectancy. And we're looking at the future of this building. We want to continue to use this building for another 30 years, as we've talked about. And it's time, if we can get warranties on this roof, that will take you to that point in time. And given the fact that there are some sections of this roof that are starting to fail, it's our recommendation that to the town that it's time to start looking at replacing it. And quite honestly, we have other roofs, the other schools, and we have two other schools, and we actually, the two roofs that were put on the high school and the middle school, Sarah Noble, those are coming up on 20 years as well. So we're gonna have to start looking at some of those things down the road. So it was our feeling that in order to be a good steward of this facility, it's time to start looking at those kind of things where you've got a roof that's 30 years old that is starting to show signs of failure. And at the same time, I'm sorry, just let me just say, at the same time, we can address the 1990 portion by upgrading it, as Steve talked about, with the additional insulation, do the more protection, so that will also last the same length as the new roof that we're putting on. That's what our thinking was.
I just didn't get
Right
all
or
that
wrong.
from the
That's what-
state.
I understand.
And, you know, I
Glad you asked the
understand what the
question.
supplier is saying,
Mhm.
but I wanted to hear what,
No
and
problem.
John takes good care of our buildings, so I would like to just know, because I don't see any, by looking at this, I don't,
Right.
I mean, I couldn't tell you whether it's good, bad, or different, you know?
This is a 2012 scan. We haven't scanned, we did the new scan.
Well, perhaps you should, you know.
Well,
I mean,
I
you're
would say
saying,
it's only
we're
gonna get
talking
worse.
about
It
a
usually
lot of
gets
money.
worse, it usually gets
Yeah,
worse.
yeah.
It doesn't usually get better.
I work with school districts where we do scans. In fact, Monroe was just there. We did 2 scans. We're gonna be presenting, to their board about the next year's project. I work with schools that are the same size as ours here, and they're putting 1 or 2 projects every year on, on a 5 and 10 year plan. So with 13, 14% wet, that's kind of an indication to me that it's time to do something.
Pete?
Thank you, Mayor. Just kind of get into the overview, so I can kind of understand. So, the Board of Education, estimated the cost at 2.2 to replace the roof?
I was back in 2011.
Right, and now the cost is?
About 2.2, just get my notes here so I can do the right.
2476.
2.4, 2.476.
And the differential is just because of additional work that you found that you
We find that it's 5 to 7% in the industry between labor and materials every year over the past 15 years. 5
And-
to 7%.
Okay. And during the 15-16 budget process, we indicated that we'd be willing to bond the cost of the roof rather than the board using their non-recurring capital, right? So my first question is, did the Board of Ed have a committee that looked at this project?
We looked at it through the facilities committee.
Okay. And this is the Facilities Committee's recommendation?
That went to the board.
Okay. And the board voted on it?
They voted on the motion that I read to you before, yes.
And the vote was carried unanimous? How was it?
7 to 1, I believe at the time, 7 to 1.
7 to 1, okay. And what you're asking us, after you're consulting with board council, is for us to approve the funds and also set up a building committee?
Well, typically, as I understand yes, so typically, as I understand things in the state, if the funding goes to the town establishes a building committee. Now, I've seen other places where they've asked the board to handle whatever, you know, a project in their own, but it's really, once the funding cycle is through the town, it's the town's prerogative on how they wanna handle the overseeing of the roof, of the project, I'm sorry.
And within that, we decided to take the route of a building committee.
Yeah.
Right, then we would be the ones going through the town process, clerk of the works, so that kind of
If that's
stuff.
how you wanted to do it, sure.
Basically how that would work.
Sure. Just like you've done other building, it's up to you. I mean, that's your prerogative to do that, and I'm not sure what all the town, I know the state law in terms of how that works, but I don't know if you have any specific things in your town. But they can, I mean, I've been in school districts where they formed a building committee of 2 people from the board. That was enough to form the building committee. I mean, it's not, you know, there's no guidelines, I don't think, about how the building committee has to be formed.
And what was the board's thoughts and process? Because it says here we're requesting the mayor and town council to form a building committee.
Well, I think that was just looking at how generally state statutes, how the state manages building projects. But how you wanted to do that then is whether it's form the building committee, ask the board to do that. I mean, that's again your prerogative on how to do that. We really didn't get to that level of discussion with the board.
I'll defer for now, Mayor.
Joe?
Yeah, it's getting extremely late. So give us a rundown on prices, because 2.4, and we all see 4.2.
Can I just tell you, talk a little bit?
Can I just,
yeah.
hold on just a second,
Sure.
so can we get a motion to extend the meeting for another
So moved.
20 minutes?
20?
Well, we have another update on our drug abuse program from the youth agency.
Why didn't we ask that person to come back?
I'm just going to ask, in 20 more minutes, you were thinking that after another 20 minutes, we'll be able to make a decision on this?
No, I thought that you would be asking questions. You was gonna give it up. Do you want more?
No, I'm more in favor of tabling it. Yeah, I'd like to see all of that. I think this is just one piece of paper, and now this tonight. I feel woefully undereducated on this, to make any decision. I'm just being honest, that's me.
That's
It-
fine.
My question was just to give us some information. We have 2 figures here, 2.4.
Oh, that's why I
And
asked before. I thought
4.2.
it was 4 million. Yeah.
So just to give us a rough, so we know when we get the rest of this information.
And I apologize, I didn't know that you didn't have.
All in
that.
favor of extending?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I apologize, I didn't bring the copy of it, I thought you had, I didn't know you didn't have it.
We don't make copies
I'm
of
sorry,
somebody.
I didn't realize that, so I apologize. So there's more information in here, and you're not gonna, this doesn't give you everything we have. I just did a summary of the cost, so I'll pass that out so you can take a look at it and I can go through it with you, but it's not the details of the product that was going to be here. So let me give you that to start and then. So what we did was, while this is going around, we bid, as Steve said, we bid the project based on not going to state reimbursement, because you cannot bid a project for state reimbursement without state approval of the project first. They want to look at the guidelines, and they need to go all through that before they'll let you bid a project. So what we did was, Steve wrote, the Garland Company put together specifications that are all detailed here. There's pages and hundreds of pages of the specifications for the roof work that we put together. We had, again, we did this through the U.S. Communities Project. We had 3 bidders that bid on it. We had a low bid of $2,171,557. There are 2 additional areas in the roof that need to be worked on. One is, if you've been in the middle school, there's these long skylights, 2 of them that are, what are they, 70 feet?
They're like 80, 90 feet.
And it makes no sense, there are some leaks in there, there's no sense you're gonna re-roof the roof not to replace those things at the same time. We have a cost, there's 2 of them there at $105,000, that's again a part of the bid. And then the other part is the mansards. I keep learning all these roofing terms. That's basically the metal that goes around the roof. And we want that, some of that is, it's not being replaced, some of that is currently rusting and needs to be,
All the new,
painted.
the top part of it is gonna
sanded
have all
down,
new.
not sanded down, whatever the
The
word
top
is.
part's gonna have all new metal, and then we're gonna color match it, color-wise, with all the rest of the fascia.
So that, and that's non-reimbursable anyway, so that's where the 2.4 million came from. And again, all the backup, all the pricing, everything that the bidder gave us is all in here. What we did then is we talked to the same bidder, about, can you give us an estimate of what you think the price would be based on using the state guidelines, which again is the steeper pitch roof, having to remove all of the units off the roof to do this because of the steeper pitch. We would then get involved with, there are windows up in the ceiling that provide light. We'd get involved with having to remove those windows and replacing them, and that's where we get into some of the issues about the hazardous materials that we mentioned. So those things would all have to be done. He came back and gave us this price of $3.9 million. Now again, it's not a bid price, but that's the estimate from a reputable same bidder that gave us that. We estimated approximately 36%. A reimbursement rate is just about 40% right now, but there are a group of things that are not eligible even under the state reimbursement. So we estimated, trying to be reasonable, we used a 36% number as to what the state would reimburse you, which brings you down to about $2.5 million. The skylights and the painting of mansards, again, are not reimbursable. So that gave the price of the state reimbursed roof, if you will, to $2.8 million, about a difference of $300,000. Now, again, we didn't, if the board or the town chooses that you want us to put the specs and go to the state and get that and do that bid, we can, that's up to you. But that's where we got that from. So is there any questions
What
about?
are we replacing the skylight with?
It's a similar.
They are, the skylights,
Skylights?
yeah, it's a company that's no longer in business.
They're old.
Natural sending, and they're no longer in business, so they all have to be custom made unless we can work with the school on reconfiguring them.
Well, what are we talking about R value for this window? Because here's the reality of it. You could put R infinity on this entire roof, okay? Every drop of heat is gonna go pouring out of that skylight.
Well,
No matter what you buy, you could put bulletproof glass up there, and you're still, every drop of heat, which is gonna continue to keep the cost high of operating the school and keeping the school comfortable. I mean,
I'm on your side.
I know you are, I'm not yelling at you. In my opinion, if you're gonna do the roof, get rid of the skylights, because it's a hole in the sky.
Well, the reason why they're
Looks
there
pretty.
is because it provides the only light for that section of the building. That's internal.
We don't have lights? We don't have electricity?
It's the only area that provides outside light to the inside.
While I think it's fabulous for outside light, from an energy efficiency standpoint, all of the money is going out of the skylight. You could do a wonderful job on this building, turning it into a cooler, but as soon as you take the hat off, which is the skylight, you've defeated the purpose.
I don't think any of us disagree.
Okay,
but-
hang on a second, I think Paul had his hand up
Sorry.
for the next.
Yeah, Jay, the numbers that were provided in the memo to us are inconsistent with
Really?
the chart.
Oh, that's,
So if you look on page 2, it says the total estimated price of state reimbursement is $4.209 million, but the chart says
no, I'm sorry,
3.9.
that's.
Which numbers control?
The one 3.9 is on the previous side.
So it's 3.9.
That's a good faith estimate of what it would be.
I apologize. Yeah, I didn't check it. I didn't.
No problem at all. What's the life of the new roof and the warranty?
30-year NDL edge to edge through us.
Have we been provided with that?
I can get you samples of that, absolutely.
That would be great. When did the existing warranty run out on the current thing?
It was no more than 20 years.
20 years, so it would have been.
2010.
Which is basically when we started looking at that.
I read in your literature about the preventative maintenance required to keep the roof warranty in place. How much does that cost per year?
I personally go on every roof. All I have to do is have John call me and say, Steve, I do 2 inspections a year in the spring and in the fall. I will give him a written letter of what needs to be done. No other manufacturer does that. They charge me to do that. I do that for free. And it's filling the pitch boxes. Someone made mention of a car. You buy a new car, you gotta do your oil change. A lot of generic manufacturers out there would rather you not do the preventive maintenance and avoid the warranty. I'd rather have guys.
See?
Yeah,
Fill a pitch box, tell me what that means.
Pitch box would be like this,
Oh,
for instance. You have your HVAC, and then you have your conduit, all your electrical goes into, essentially it'll hold the roof.
Yeah.
And they put pourable sealer around it. Over time, it wears out and it's concave, so you gotta put more in it. So you're talking a couple $100 a year.
For the total roof for preventative maintenance?
Typically, yeah.
That's it.
If you stay on top of it. Now, if you don't do anything, then you end up with, a lot more bigger
Can
problems.
we make sure the minutes reflect that so that's memorialized? So,
Thank you.
Every year, did you spend the 200 on the roof?
Well, and just to mention that if I could, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's one of the things that I felt in working with Garland Company is that I've had issues in schools and with roofs, and you have a leak. Well, you call the guy who put it down, he said, well, we followed the specs, so you call the engineer, the architect, and they said, well, they didn't put it on right. You know, you have a problem, you go over here. And
There's no spin doctor on our side.
That's the issue. That's
I
one of the benefits.
I bid it, I watched the job, I issued a warranty, he calls me the leak, I'm fixing it, that's it.
So,
In our warranty versus sales is the lowest in the industry, it's less than 0.5% base.
Jay, we appreciate your proactive effort to the future roofs. When can we expect the potential replacement costs and years of those roofs for planning purposes?
For the schools. Well, you know, we can start looking at that. We really were focused on trying to get this done. I think once we get it, well, I think next year, once we know where we're going with this.
So we can plan.
Well, we've talked about that as well. We want to do that, absolutely. And I think we're looking at Northville, Hill and Plain, and then the high school. You know, we're looking at a rolling plan, as Steve talked about.
High school's 1999, you got a 20-year warranty, you're coming up to your 20-year warranty on the set.
That's why I'd rather plan than de-react.
Yeah, well, I think and this has been.
The existing polyiso that we're covering on the 1990 roof, does that dry out?
It's dry. We're gonna cut out anything that's wet. So anything that's marked wet gets removed, replaced with new, and then we go over with another layer.
So earlier tonight, Mr. Lawson brought up some comments about the air quality and the hygienist.
Yep.
What documentation do we have that demonstrates to us that we should have zero concerns with respect to the people within the building?
Well, can I take a minute to talk about that? Sure. As Steve explained, we have two sections on the roof, the 1973 and the 1990. We brought in hygienists to test for asbestos, and we did provide a copy of that report, which we can get to everybody. Hazardous materials, specifically asbestos, are found throughout the 1973 portion of the roof, as we expected. Since an entire 1973 portion of the roof will be removed during construction, all hazardous materials, including any potential other things that we don't know about, will be taken off in accordance with all state and federal requirements. The folks that we have that will do that work are licensed. They're licensed to do asbestos, PCBs, anything else. All that stuff will be done. So anything on the large yellow section there will be totally removed and taken out. Okay, that's part of the price. Yes, part
No
of the
matter
price.
what they find.
Right. It's all,
We tested this built-up roof, 1973, it's all hot, 100%. So it has to be removed during summer. We were hoping to do it this past summer, hopefully we do it next summer, because it's a big section. And it's not something you can do when kids are in school.
So the statement that was in the paper that said that we had tested and found PCBs and caulkings around the windows is not correct. We did not test that. When we were looking at the option of going for state funding, we found that we would then have to raise, as I said, all the HVAC structures, remove windows on the second floor that provide light down into the building, and also what Steve calls the through counter flashings, which he did explain to me, but I'm not.
This is a sample of through-wall counter flashing. This is a good example. This is the original through-wall counter flashing, and on your building, this is, if we went for state reimbursement, this would all have to be removed. You'd have to go up another layer, and basically you got a close-up of what that looks like.
And then there's windows that have similar issues. That's where there's potential for PCBs in the caulking and the areas. We're not touching that in the project that we're talking about.
If you start getting into that, and you test for PCBs and they're in that caulking, now they're in your brick and everything else, and we're not touching that. We're staying below that. We're reusing that. It's not getting touched during this.
We're not touching it at all.
Well, what about the caulking? Does it ever have to be replaced?
Unless, just like asbestos, as long as it's maintained and you don't touch it, you do not have to remove it. It's safe and it's fine, because it's not airborne, it's contained.
They find PCBs in caulking. They find PCBs in that type of a material.
So what's the life expectancy of that caulk?
As long as it's on there, you go over it.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, say that. Okay, so you just go over
That's
what's
why we're
there.
all here, not just that.
It's not friable.
But we're not taking it out. That's the key issue there. So
We're not touching it.
okay. If we, so the 1993 portion of the roof was we had the hygienist come up and look at it. He looked at the type of material that was used on that roof, he actually didn't test for asbestos because the type of materials used on that roof at that point in time had already been, asbestos type of material had been eliminated from those type of products at that point. So there were no asbestos materials in the 1990 portion of that roof. So that's where we are with that. As Steve said, if we do this roof and we do that, abate that yellow section, no person, according to state statute, can be in a building 18 years of age and under in a building that when you're doing asbestos, we work with Steve, obviously, and John to make sure that whenever we did this work, there's not going to be any kids in the building. We hope there's not going to be any adults in the building for that matter as well. But that will be coordinated between them. So there won't be any work done with any kids in the building. We've talked about second shifts. We've talked about weekends, vacation weeks, whatever it takes to do that. That's the plan.
That's how we did it.
I hope that covers what
Yeah,
you're
but do
asking.
we have any professional recommendation from a professional that states the method that we're proposing to do this with the construction, it's in there?
The hygienist
That-
is.
Okay,
yeah,
so there's a
and-
report that basically says, based on the construction methodologies that are proposed, the timing of construction, they're warranting that there will be no issue with respect to air quality within the.
I would not say
after
that
construction.
specifically in here, but
Okay.
can we get that?
That's a
We
good
probably
start.
get some.
Yeah, the way that we planned this, the 1990 section, we're gonna be done second shift, fall or spring. In a perfect world, we'd be doing this fall, because there's no asbestos anywhere. But you need a full summer, no matter how big your crew is, you need a full summer to do the 1973 section. It is nice because you have 11 different sections on the building. So if we have like a long weekend, and it's a smaller section, we can get in there and do that and do a section at a time. The way we set up the spec is we're able to rip. In fact, we're gonna have a crew ripping, second shift, and come back in the morning and install if need be. And we're gonna do, it's a 2-ply modifier, we're gonna do the first ply because it's hotter, it's faster doing it in hot, dropping back, getting that all done, and then dropping back and doing the rest in the fall and cold.
And you take all the material away with you.
That's why we put the spec together that way, so it's all done during the summer.
Who measures as you're doing these sections? I realize there won't be anybody under 18 in the building, but when a section is done, or whenever you're ready to let somebody under 18 come back in the building, who measures and guarantees the air quality and any residue, et cetera? I mean, I know what I had to go through just to remove some paint that had lead, so who
Completely
does
different,
that?
yeah. It's just completely different in terms of.
But who
outside-
guarantees it? I know it's different, but who guarantees it? Who comes in and measures the air, or looks at the dust and makes sure it's not
It
there?
would be a hygienist. If you feel strongly that we should be doing that, we would hire a hygienist to do it now.
I think if we have children going in the building when you're done, if they can't be there while it's being done, there's no guarantees that something isn't left behind. Is that part of the pricing? Having air quality checks when it's done?
Not yet.
Indoor air quality testing is not part of their project pricing, but we could certainly do that as a method.
I don't know if it's at school, but you do.
Mine is going in there now.
Well, what do you think?
I agree with you.
I mean, you work in this business,
I think it's fine.
I agree with you.
That would be
Yeah,
great.
we could-
Yeah.
That's not part of, the project part is there will be, as we said, a certified company that does asbestos removal is the qualified group that has to do that. There'll be manifests put together on what goes out of the building, that goes with the shipping of that stuff. That whole stuff is followed by
But then
state
you're
statute.
coming in and you're gonna work on it.
So we'll do that,
So,
yeah.
before it's all done and we find out that for some reason now nobody can inhabit because it's got some half-life of some problem, wouldn't it be a good idea as they go along if
We
we
can
do
work
this?
with our environmental consultants to do that. We'll make
I
sure
mean,
that-
I know.
The building would.
Good idea.
So
you could add that in,
Yeah.
so that whenever they're doing work, somebody comes in and checks the air
Right.
quality.
One other thing that I just want to mention is all the drain bowls on the 1973 section were tested as well for asbestos. They have insulation, and it's kind of surprising that they weren't asbestos contained. They're not. So when we remove those would be done ahead of time, so there's no concern with those because there's no asbestos.
Thank you. How many people here want this electronically or want a hard copy?
I like
Electronic. Okay, how many want it as a hard copy? Walter?
What would you like specifically? Because there's,
That,
Yeah,
we
right
want
there.
that.
Put together this. and-
What you
So-
And I'll add a
come
few other
to
things
your
that I
picture.
didn't put.
So if you
I
could
would love
send
to see
it,
an option to see of, and I'm
if you
over,
could send that electronically, and do you want a hard copy, Dennis?
I'm over.
No, I'm electronic.
And what is the additional cost when you get rid of those skylights?
I'm all for natural light,
It would be less.
Well,
It would
but
be-
I
there's,
think I have
it literally is all
But
on the
just
ceiling.
not-
I mean, I think that's,
But you have a question, I was nice enough, John gave me complete tours of every building, that's a huge area of skylight. So, they're not in business anymore, and even if they were, this is a building, and I know enough about the building to know that just because it was 89 feet long, or whatever it is, 89, what did you say they were, 8 or 9 feet
89
long?
and 3. it is.
So, well, you said you have to replace it with that, put in 2 smaller ones.
Well, that's
I
the thing.
understand
Yeah,
it
you could
lights
do
up
this, yeah.
the area very nicely,
That's
however,
some of the
Tom
things.
has a very good point.
But either, no matter what you put in
It's
there,
at the,
it's all, it's, even the best window in the world is R8.
we'll look into
It's still,
what the,
it's still a radiation.
So,
It means
they'll
everything,
take that
everything is gonna
information.
flow right up and out of the hole.
It's a suggestion to keep it because it's aesthetically,
Because there's no natural light. The center
If
floor
you're-
glass.
in that area.
Hey, you're gonna get to come back and see these, because we'll put you at the
It's all
front.
building performance.
That's
Here,
what
because this is.
Well, if I know early
This
enough.
is like the third time I've been the last person on the agenda.
Well,
You just,
you seem to
Oh,
like it, so we do it for you.
I think the board.
You're the only I will get that.
We'll invite them back, we'll get that in the meantime.
Thank you very much.
And there's some other, things you guys can consider with regard to the building committee, if anybody here wants to be on it.
I'll be on it.
That or whatever, so. Yeah. So if there's no more to do. Sorry.
It's a massive,
We had a last item on the agenda, right?
Yeah.
What was that?
It was Mark Mankin, but I sent him home because Joe said may as well send him home.
So, over the last 2 weeks, we spent 3.5 hours debating one tree that we may need to remove permanently. But we didn't have the time tonight to get an update from Mark relative to our drug issue. I think as a council, we need to start considering our priorities and focusing on some of our major issues in this town that are before us, and making the time for it.
When you asked me, the agenda is shifted around. We put them at the beginning.
When it shouldn't have done that, Joe.
Well,
I mean,
any one of us,
you know, we
I
had
understand.
overdose on the cream last week, it's like, really?
I'd like to ask that the youth agency be the first item after minutes and all that, please. And I have to say, I agree with Paul, we spend an inordinate amount of time, not that it's not useful, but we do have a problem we have, that other towns have as well, certainly not just us. But I really think that when I hear people talking about 3 hours spent in a turf committee meeting, and I wonder, how come every week they're not meeting for 3 hours to talk about the drug problem? It's everywhere, and I'm worried about PCBs and air quality for children. I think I'm worried about other things too, so it is up to
Well,
us.
we do have a lot going on, so I was really wanting to get to the update, but.
No,
I agree with you, but then we as council people here speak up and we move it. Or you know what? There was a year that I stomped up and down and I had an extra meeting in a year. Remember, we stopped doing all this. And so, years ago, I brought that issue up when I first got on this council. So, you know,
It's at the beginning.
we can set an extra meeting. We can do things, it is a priority, but let's make sure. I mean, we love trees, but
In
there's a lot
fairness
of
to the
trees.
mayor, the tree issue, I had no idea that it was only once a year before this came up. I thought it was every couple of weeks they would have that.
No, and that's what
One
we
a
said
year?
at the last meeting.
At the last meeting, it said a hand.
Yeah.
Well, we went from a handful to one.
Yes, it was 1 or 2.
Well, education is all, and we learned a lot about these topics tonight, and it takes time to do so.
Well, I appreciate it. So, motion to adjourn?
So moved.